Alrighty. G'day guys and welcome back to another episode of the Bradley J. Driver Experience. We're here. It's the first one with Chris in the studio. It's so good to be here in the Experience HQ. And why not kick it off with a couple of mates, a couple of guys that are doing great things in the podcast space. And if you know me, you know that I love my MMA. Can't fight to save my life, but fuck, I love watching it. And these guys here host a podcast. It's all about MMA. It's about reviewing the fights that have been, previewing the ones that are coming up, and just talking a whole heap of knuckles, submissions, all the good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, from your home, your car, or wherever you are, give a very warm welcome to the boys from Couch Critics MMA.
Hell yeah.
So good to have the boys here. If you're watching this, which some of the loyal Experience followers will be on YouTube, if you're watching this, I'll go it from left to right. So we've got Cal down the left, we've got Jayden in the middle, we've got Beau here just beside me on the right. And boys, it's just a pleasure to have you in here.
Thanks for having us, man.
It's weird, man. The amount of times I've listened and watched your podcast and heard you, I'm like, bro, this dude's got the sickest intros.
Yeah.
And then to be introducing us, it feels weird.
Yeah,
on the
man.
other end,
Grateful.
it feels weird. Grateful to be here, bro.
They're pure freestyle, the intros, so sometimes they're great, sometimes they're shit out. But we just had a coffee and a bit of peanut butter poached cheese. The boys know what's happening with the peanut butter and poached eggs, so
now we're
it's
hyped.
I'm hyped today. I'm ready to go. Honestly, boys, it's funny. We just spoke about it, and it's funny because if you follow me on Instagram, you'd know that just recently, and by just recently, it's the 20th of Feb. So if you're listening to this later, get up to date. But I've just finished reading The Alchemist for the second time. Cal's read that too, and we were talking about throughout that book the presence of like omens and how you're meant to sort of meet up with people at certain times and for them to be a part of your life at certain times. And we have a lot of, between these boys, we've got a mate of two brothers on the outside and a mate in the middle. And, the two brothers, the as a party boys, our families sort of link up back in the past. And it's funny, we sort of reconnected probably a year or two ago.
Yeah, about that.
Through property. And then all of a sudden we're here shooting a podcast. So it's funny how it all works out, but I'm a big fan of what you guys do. Like I said, I love my MMA, and I've been listening to the show, and there's something nice about people that you know or people that are local talking about the things you love, and you guys do it very well. You've got a great dynamic. So talk to us about how it all began.
Well, I think it began, what card did you say it was?
Adesanya. Oh, that was the first episode, but it was after Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero.
That's right.
We were talking. Yeah, we were talking at Beau's house.
I feel like you, it was pretty simple. You pretty much just bring it up, like, man, I've been thinking, I don't know if I've got inspiration from you.
It would have been.
But you just sort of hit it. It's like, let's do a podcast. And then I jumped at it. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like,
once with Spud's personality, once he's got something in his brain, that's it.
I just get obsessed with it and stuff. And
starts researching. I throw ideas out all the time. So I'm like the ideas man. We should do this. And then it leaves my brain. That's it. I'm done. That's my input. And he does the research.
10 of it, you throw 10 out and then one sticks.
100.
But then, you pretty much, and I jumped at it. I'm like, bro, that makes so much sense. But then we're sort of just like, why?
Yeah,
why are we going to start a podcast? How are we going to start a podcast? And all them sort of things. And then it sort of, I think we sat there for like 2 hours after the card finished, and we're just like rolling ideas, rolling names, like a couple of our first names and a couple of our logos, bro. It's hysterical.
We should post them.
It's hysterical to look back on, but yeah, then it just started like, how do we actually set up a podcast? You know what I mean? And then pretty much research. Got all the gear, and it was a pretty long process, like to get everything set up and everything. And then, like we were talking about earlier, how we were set up. It took us a couple months to set up.
All the gear's there,
and then we just didn't do it.
Just sat there. There was a room fully set up, exactly like this, ready to go, and just we'd be like, 2 weeks from now we'll do it. I'm a bit busy. We'll go 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, another month. 6 months later, we hadn't done one episode. It was more of a, I don't know, anxiety issue and worrying, what people are going to think about.
You just get trigger shy, right?
Yeah.
I think so. And all it comes down to is you just need to do it. You just need to start. And recording that first practice episode, you didn't know. It was the unknown as well. It was the same as coming here. It's the unknown, what you're scared of. But we just had to do it. And then as soon as we'd done it, then we knew what we needed and we knew what we had to do, and then it just went from there.
It's almost you've got to be willing to have your ego bruised a little bit.
Yeah.
Like You know, I remember putting out. It's funny because for so long I copped my first 4-star rating the other day on Apple Podcast, and I was like, which son of a bitch gave me 4 stars? But it's funny. You gotta be ready for that. And
100%.
I think I've learned from Gary V that not everyone's gonna love your stuff, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But most people will get behind you, and I've seen that with you guys. Like especially locally, we've got. I say it all the time. We've got such a great community here in the Illawarra that. Everyone just bends behind locals and loves to see locals doing well, and that's one of the things that I love about our area. And I know I've experienced that, and I can see you guys experiencing that as well. And you know, it's just good to know you got people behind you.
100%. We never even thought about people talking good. That was the weird thing. All of our thoughts was people hating on it. Like we never.
What are they gonna say?
And after the first release, everyone got on board. Man, it was mad. But funny story. The first ever one, Spuddy, Jayden pressed record, and it was just silence. We didn't speak. We got so...
Because we didn't have a dynamic, we weren't sure, because we didn't know how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
So
the flow.
I was like, I was going to start the intros, like obviously I need to work on them since after No, but we didn't know how we were going to do it. And then, we pressed record and we're like, we just had like an anxiety thing. Like, we don't know what we're doing.
What we're going to talk about. You would start double guessing yourself. And like we know, like we listen to the post-fight press conferences and all that kind of stuff. And we're hitting the same things they're saying. We're saying, you know, we follow it pretty avidly. We've followed it for a few years deep. Like we know who trains with who generally, what fight is the right fight to make, stuff. So we were saying all this stuff, but then once it comes to recording, we're like,
how do we put it together?
It was
and
hard.
I think you're your own worst critic as well.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
You're your own worst couch critic. But we had our first practice, the pilot, and I think it was 8 minutes long, and we sent it around to a couple of our friends and we asked for feedback, and
that's a good idea.
Yeah. And in reality, it was terrible. It was terrible. Like we were super nervous and stuff, and then but then when they tell you. Like it's going well and stuff like that. It's pretty reassuring.
100%. But like you said, like Wollongong's awesome. Like we have to thank everyone that supports us. Like we didn't expect to have already. You know, we're still on the come up, but to have as much support as we already have, it's been amazing. It makes it so much easier to, you know, we're putting out something that people are liking. The content's good,
definitely.
And makes us want to keep going.
And the opportunities that come off the back of it. Like 12 months ago, we never thought we'd be sitting here with you.
It was kind of in a way though. We have talked about like. One day we're going to get, you know, to that level and Brad's going to ask us to come on. You know, that's kind of the goal of ours.
That was legit me. I was thinking, not even with the podcast, I was thinking even Joe Rogan. I was like, I wonder if I'll ever have a life interesting enough to be on a podcast. And then even yours, I was like, fuck it, why would I be on here? And then shit just happens. Like Omen.
You know, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think about that a lot. Like, what am I doing every day? Actually, to talk about Rogan and to reference him, he's got a fucking amazing saying which I love. He referred to it on one of his episodes where he spoke about live your life as if there's a documentary crew following you 24/7.
Yeah.
And everything that you do will be taped and released. And if you live with that mentality, you kind of rise to the occasion. And I think about it all the time because, you know, if Joe Rogan went through his inbox, and one day I know I'll meet that bloke that was sitting alongside him,
100,
and he's going to go through his inbox and go, this cunt's been messaging me for years because I used to send him messages and be like, hey bro, like love seeing you at number one, love your content, but I'm coming for you.
It's good, like, confidence.
Subtle jabs.
100%. And I think you've just got to have that mentality that eventually you're going to be there. And, you know, we come from an area, like I said, that is very supportive, but there's almost a mentality in Wollongong that is limiting to this area where people go, oh, I'm from the Gong, it's not Sydney, you know. I probably can't make it in the big smoke. But if that's your mentality, you never will.
It's exactly
100%.
Right.
How far can you go, sort of thing. People think like that. But we've always sort of shot for the stars, though. We've thought we want to be, same as you, top 1, top 3 podcasts in Australia. We want to be top 1 MMA podcast in Australia.
And we believe we can do it too. Like
100%.
Yeah, we're on our way, but 100%.
100%, and I'm 100% behind you. And, you know, I love what you said there before, Beau. You spoke about you guys watch everything. And that's the thing for me. I can get away with being kind of an amateur at everything and only having limited knowledge because my guests are so diverse and so far and wide. But when you do a podcast that's purely MMA, you need to know it. And I think, you know, for most people, the thing I like about you guys is because you've not come from a background where you fought in an organisation or you've been influenced by people within that circle. It's a very raw and honest take on what's happening in the sport. So give us, I guess, a bit of an idea on, firstly, where the love and the passion for MMA come from.
I think I'll take the start. Our cousin, Jason Baltov, he was Australian kickboxing champ.
Yeah.
So he runs Kaikishin in Unadera. Out there, what is it, the kickboxing?
I don't know what it's
we
called.
literally used to train. I just call it Kaikishin, but that's the martial art. But just watching him fight when we were younger, we used to go watch his fights, and it was just like he was kind of a god to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
man.
as kids, he's like our second cousin. We call him our uncle. Going out there, watching him in the ring, just he's got a knockout. Actually, I'll send it to you later. It's what is it, 20 seconds? Literally
8 or something.
Head kick, boom, knocks the guy out. Didn't even crack a sweat. Like he was like our idol, and ever since then we've kind of looked highly on him. And then having older friends and family that used to watch, the UFC, like we said, we used to hire the DVDs at the video shop and
Civic Video, shout out.
60-year-old video fights. And we're watching it like, as
that's
it happened so long ago. But that's really the actual start.
I think everyone has the sort of appreciation for the entertainment side of it. And growing up playing footy, you always had that little side, and you love watching it and stuff. And then I don't think it didn't really cultivate to the next level of how much we loved it until we started training it.
Yes,
that's true.
Okay.
And we got a lot of people, they're fans, and then they've never trained before, and they don't have the appreciation for how much it goes in, how skilled these guys are,
100%.
just to make the walk, just to put their skills and then get the crazy knockouts they get or submissions. And we didn't really have the appreciation for it until we started training, and we realised, and our coach is there, he's like, throw a jab. We don't even know.
We're in a line.
Isn't it funny? Because it's almost the same as stand-up comedy. You watch someone on Netflix, like you watch a special and you go, that wasn't funny. And then you think, well, if I had to stand up in front of 10,000 people and crack jokes, I'd probably go, how about that right in? Like, what else you got? So I think you start to appreciate it, like you said, when you're in it and you're training.
Yeah.
So what do you do for training?
So I'm at Gracie Baja. I started at Gracie Baja Shell Harbour, Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then we also started MMA at PCYC, Lake Illawarra.
I want to say, I don't know how you had the nuts to do that.
So it's probably pretty much story.
Yeah, you pretty much started training Gracie Baja with Kyle, or you can tell us.
Yeah, basically, I remember it was went to Bali a couple of years ago, and like the boys said earlier, I injured my knee in under 16s footy, so I hadn't played sport since then. So it's sport, even with your active boys running and stuff, being around the boys and having a culture like that, you need something like that, and I didn't have it for years. And look, the only thing I knew is rugby league, so I was looking at going back to rugby league. After 6 years, bad knee, I'm just like, look, I'm just going to go back. And one of the guys I was on holidays with, he goes, look, I've just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why don't you just have a go? And I'm usually in my box, in the shell. I never try things new. But then for something clicked, and I went, you know what? I'm going to try it. Don't even know what it is, but I'm going to try it.
Actually, just sorry to jump in, but there was a moment we were drinking at a bar in Bali, and a dude was like, he was off his head, and he started going at this girl, like, he was ready to fight her.
Yeah,
I was shitting myself. I'm like, my stomach's, I was like, oh man, like I can't do anything. And then Kyle, because he'd trained, he's like, fuck, I want to go take him down and choke him out. And I was like, it was just that confidence. I was like, I wouldn't do it. Like I couldn't fight. I was like, I can't even help this girl if she needed help. I couldn't help her.
And so, as a man, like you should, especially with violence against women and that, we wanted to so badly want to stand up and protect this lady, but I couldn't do anything about it. I forgot about that.
Probably knocked me
and
out.
that was probably a catalyst too, because it was the day after that we organised to go check it out when we got back, obviously. But yeah, so that started it, and then because we were watching the fight so much, we thought I want to do some sort of striking as well, and literally walked into PCYC by myself, went up to a boxing coach and just said, look, we're looking for, like an MMA style class. Do you do anything? He happens to be a coach of multiple UFC multiple UFC fighters.
I've heard about this lad.
Been fighting for years. Just an underground dude, keeps to himself. But he's trained some, like, to give his resume, in 10 years at the PCYC, they had one champion.
Golden Gloves champion.
One Golden Gloves champion. He was there for less than...
state champion.
Less than 12 months, him being there, 3 in the first year. He's just different. Wow. He just knows how to train people.
I think that goes back to what Omen
Yeah.
Talking
Just
about
meant
the
to
person
happen.
legend. And there's a million things that could have happened for you not to go in there.
100.
Yeah.
And me and Cal, since we quit at footy, we wanted to do that.
It was actually when we were still there.
We
'cause
wanted to do
as a
something.
fitness thing, because
Yeah.
we were fans of it. But then, like, we were driving together once, I remember, and it was like we were thinking of gyms, and then we were the thought of walking in, I was like,
Couldn't do it.
nah, I couldn't do it. And then Beau just did it by himself.
And
So they had a character for me too. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's not what I do. Like I went back to, I'm kind of in my shell, just sticking my lane.
And to work out like that and be coached by such, I think he was a perfect guy. Adam Higgins, Northside
Yeah,
Kill
shout
Boxing,
out.
we'll shout him out. He's the man.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we said, coach UFC fighters, Alex Chambers, Richie Welsh, and he was the perfect guy to
Take us under his wing, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
to start first. And it's just crazy because they weren't even doing MMA there; they were doing
Mm.
boxing. And he's like, "Fuck yeah, man, let's do an MMA class." And we go there, and it's us three and two of your mates, and then that's how it all
And
started.
we just
Really.
grew it into a class from there.
That's great.
So-
But that's pretty much where the love comes from after
Yeah.
training. I
You know,
feel like.
it's funny, just to go back to what you said before about that incident inside that bar in Bali where you want to be the guy that can stand up and, you know, I was telling you guys this morning off camera, I was listening to Rogan and Jocko Willink
Yeah.
just
man.
yesterday, which I've listened to that pod like 2 or 3 times now, but I just keep going back to it. And they spoke about this thing where, like, you know in your heart with jiu-jitsu, and I haven't done jiu-jitsu before, but they were saying, like, you know in your heart that when someone chokes you out and you tap, like, if that was real life and that was
Yeah.
a real situation, that man would have killed you.
Yes.
So there's something about it where it's so raw at nature.
Yeah.
Whilst the sport is, like you guys said, a gentle art where there is unbelievable respect, and a lot of people are leaving their ego at the door when they walk into one of those gyms,
Yeah.
which I want to touch on in a minute.
Yeah.
But there's this thing where, you know, in the back of your head, like, this is true
Yeah.
combat. This is
100%.
true, like, human life.
Yeah.
We live in a very civilized world right now here in Australia, but there's places in the world where this shit is happening,
100%.
and it's life or death.
100%.
Well, we talk about that now. We don't know ourselves. The confidence we've got from training every day is unmatched. Like, we can't think of ourselves before we started training.
And
Yeah.
to back that up too, I used to, like, we're not much of party people. We used to, back in the day, we'd go out and have a few drinks and stuff, and there's always confrontation, there's always that, and look, I've probably never been in a fight in my life, but I've seen a lot being out in town, as you would have seen too. You know, once people have some alcohol and stuff, things get a bit hairy, and being like so scared, I feel like a lot of fights come from being scared.
Insecurity.
But as a man, you have insecurities.
Yeah.
So you see a big dude walk in, and you think like your girlfriend's next to you, and you're feeling a bit insecure. You want to like puff your chest out, and you start poking jabs, and then a lot of fights come from things like that. And I feel like insecurities. And now that like you said, we've got that confidence a bit more, behind us, and you don't want to. And like you said, you're going in there. It's raw combat. After you train, there's nothing less I want to do than to have a confrontation with someone.
You know what? It creates humble nature.
100%. Because you know, and there's guys like, to shout out some of the boys at Gracie. There's guys that if you looked at them, they look like the most average dude, 65 kilos. You know, like a skinny kind of guy. Doesn't look like anything. They beat me up. Not that I'm a big guy, but I'm 80 kilos. I'm 20 kilos heavier than these guys, and they are just ragdolling me. And it makes you think, like, when you're out, you don't know who here. Like you just said, someone that you know is that champion that was fighting. You were saying Travis as well. Yeah. We had no idea. Like, you wouldn't know that guy can.
No. You know, it's funny because like my old boy. So I'll talk about my old boy for a bit here. Like my old boy's like my hero, like my real life action hero.
Love that.
And I got Hercules tattooed on my arm, like to symbolise my dad, like that role model, that statue that I look up to. And my dad was a black belt, 1 Dan in Taekwondo.
Hectic.
And so dad's a freak of nature. But dad, we always say that, you know, people say, you know, some women have resting bitch face. My sister and I always say that dad has resting want to belt the fuck out of your face. Like, if you didn't know him, you'd go, fuck, that guy looks fierce. And he just looks like he wants to destroy me. But it's just how he looks. Like, he's the nicest bloke. But, so he was a copper. So growing up, I was always exposed to, like, this guy that was just, it's like he had no fear. Like, the amount of times someone's been carrying on in bullies or, like, throwing punches at people or trying to nick shit, and like next minute dad's tackling him across the ground, and like dad's taking control of the situation. As a young kid and as a man now, I look at that and I go, that confidence is something that I aspire to have. That confidence is something that demands the respect of the room. And it's purely just from a background of martial arts and knowing how to use your strength and knowing how to move your body to work for you, not against you. And it was probably like 10 years ago now that, I remember thinking, because it's been a long time since he was a black belt, and I said to Dad, we're watching a UFC fight actually, and I think someone threw a spinning head kick. And Dad goes, I used to be able to do one of them. And I said, bullshit. And he goes, I probably still could. And I was like, yeah, righto. I said, talk's cheap, like. And he goes, right, out in the garage. And I had to hold a kick pad above my head, and I swear to God, he jumped up and fucking flung the thing 10 yards from the top of my head, and I was like, holy shit, he's still got it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the thing you never lose then.
100%.
To a degree, you always have it. You always have that instinct and that ability to move your body a little differently or more confidently than most.
100%.
So another thing Joe Rogan said, which is so true, he said if you walk into a room, LeBron James, Tom Brady, there's all the best athletes in the world. Then Mike Tyson walks in the room, you're looking at Mike Tyson or John Jones. If there's a fighter, you're looking at them. Not like, I don't want to say in our confidence like we're not walking around like we're savages or anything.
No, but I get what you mean.
The humble people, like everyone's looking at them, sort of thing. It's
100%, because they've got power.
Exactly,
and
they
I want to
can
say
do
shout out to
something.
Mike Tyson. Fuck, it feels like we're hotboxing in here. It's that the sun's pouring through the back window there, and it's warm. I'm a few sweat pellets dropping from under the arms, but it's really cool to see you guys immersing yourself in it. As obviously you love the sport and you love learning and growing within that yourselves, but it only sort of levels you up in terms of your knowledge for the pod, right?
Exactly. Well, that's another thing too. Like, you've got the biggest guys like Ariel Helwani. A lot of the bigger guys, they've never stepped foot on a mat before. They don't know. So then they critique these guys, like they talk about like, oh, this person should have finished this or that. And how do you know? You don't. And look, we've never fought either. We're not pretending we're high and mighty. But even just having that, that few years under our belt of boxing, a bit of MMA, and obviously jiu-jitsu, we can understand what was going on. And I feel like that's where, when we break down the fights the day after, kind of thing, we can explain how that guy nearly got that omoplata, or that, the braking mechanism of that, or how hard it is to get to that position to get that. And I feel like that's where we have an edge on.
I think that's really helped. And we made a note not to, when we first started the podcast, we're not going to hate on any fighter.
Yes, that's
one of the main catalysts of why we started it. We want, because we often find around here and in Australia, it's the footy culture, which is fine.
Tall poppy syndrome, sort of.
In terms of like, your team's, say you go for Roosters, your team's versus some Broncos or whatever, you're going to hate the Broncos for that week. Whereas people sort of carry that over into MMA and they think, oh, my favourite fighter's fighting, I hate that other guy. But we're trying to bring up the knowledge of just how much it goes for them to just get in there and to respect both guys, because martial arts isn't like that.
Yeah.
Fuck, to quote Will Ferrell, take some fucking juicy plums to get in there.
Yeah, and it's not even just the UFC, it's down to the Wollongong Wars show. It's the first fight of the Wollongong Wars, which you guys, I auctioned that, eh? Yeah, but that's when I first
time I seen you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
But
I was about 12 kilos heavier than with a terrible haircut. It did not suit me at all. Just auction in the middle of the ring. But it's funny because actually, as a point I was going to bring up at some point during the pod, we both interviewed Colby Thickness.
Yes.
That's right, yes.
And that's the first time I ever was introduced to Colby. I didn't meet him personally, but I watched him fight. And I spoke with him about it on the show. He got fucking head kicked into next century. Honestly. And somehow bounced back. I thought, fuck, this guy's out.
So did we.
It was a good shot. It was a great shot. Yeah. And he bounced back to his feet and dominated the bloke for 3 rounds. And I was like, that guy is a bull already.
That dude's a savage, man.
Such a savage. And he's the nicest
dude.
Nicest guy.
That's what we were talking about. Dude. If you walk past Colby in the street, you might not think he's a skinny, sort of nice, really like soft-spoken dude. He'll fuck you up. If you start, he'll fuck you up, man.
He does security on the side too. Yeah. So people probably like these big marauders come in and don't think much of him, but they don't realise like what danger they're in being in the same room as him, live killer there.
But he'll never initiate the fight as well.
Actually,
so
I
nice.
Go back on that too when you were saying like your dad was in all those situations and stuff. He never ever would have been like ever started.
Never the initiator.
Never the initiator, but always ready to calm the situation down. I love that.
Yeah, I love it. It's we spoke about it before, and I think that humbleness. It's funny because I want to touch on one thing. I want this to be a 2-pointed topic here.
Yeah.
We spoke about jiu-jitsu, and like I said, I'm looking from the outside in as something that makes me really curious. Where I love, and it's the same with taekwondo. Like my dad would have gone through as a kid when he began, and there's that grading system.
Yeah.
And with that grading system, you're only as good as a belt that's wrapped around you. You can be fantastic as a white belt or a blue belt or a brown belt, black belt, whatever.
Yeah.
But that belt humbles you.
100%.
It gives you your stance and your position. And regardless of whether you're a blue belt who can compete with a black belt, you still have that level of respect for those guys that have come before you, that have spent their time, that have
Paid
grafted
their dues.
to paid their dues, and they're the guys that you respect.
100%.
Why don't we have a system like that in boxing?
I always
It's
ask
so strange,
yeah,
eh?
I don't know what it is, but I ask my coach too, and I find, like you said, that's what helps me too, because you, like we talked about earlier with your self-doubt, I'm putting that white belt on, and I don't know what level I'm trusting my coach who's a black belt to know what I'm at, and when you get that stripe, you have that in your heart, you're like, I know I earned this, I worked for this, and then as you work up and you get your blue belts and stuff, whereas like you said, in boxing, you don't, like, your coach can say, good, give you a pat on the back, but you don't know where you stand, or if you're at that level, or it's a bit harder to gauge.
You often find at the start your incline goes, because you don't know anything, your incline goes up like this, and then you come to a plateau pretty quickly, and then you think, because there's no grading system in boxing, you're thinking, man, I'm getting worked out here. And then John Kavanagh talks about it, Conor McGregor's coach, and you go on like this for a certain time, and then you just go bang.
You hop up,
and you feel it. I would love to see some sort of grading system from amateur to professional, but I don't know. I feel like you kind of feel it in a way.
Yeah.
You feel when you go up to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think it can go one or two ways as well. When you walk into a gym, in terms of like, people can go in there and they realise they're shit. Everyone realises they're shit when they first go in there. And a lot of people can get turned away at that.
100%.
They just think, oh, that's not for me, man. Boxing's not for me. And it goes one or two ways. You either like that, and you go, nah, I can't box. I can't do this. It's not for me. And then you just talk shit about it, hate on it, whatever. Or the second way, you go, fuck, I suck at this. I want to get better at it.
Yeah, well, that was our personality with it. We were so out of our depth, man. I was like, I know nothing, so I'm going to put all of my being into it and try and grow and get better at this. But the amount of people we've seen, our mates come to the gym one session, you get hit, or you can't hit someone that's smaller than you or whatever, they're like, nah, I'm over it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of excuses sort of, but yeah, that's what, it's two ways. You either go with it or you just get out
That's
of
what
it.
we're trying to get out of it too as well. Like, a lot of people would, I did personally before I walked into a gym, you think like, I don't know, it's just the amount of effort you've got to put in to get to that black belt and stuff. People are scared to start that journey, and they think, I can never get there, but everyone can. That's the beauty. Like, jiu-jitsu works for everyone. Boxing too. Like, if you put the time in, we interviewed Sam Goodman actually. He's a up and comer from our area, and I asked him, like, as a personal question, because I'm not naturally gifted in any way, and I said to him, did you just walk in and you were just piecing everyone up like a Deontay Wilder? And he goes, no. He goes, I had no skill at all. I just put hours and hours, and look where he is now. He's on his way to Australian titles. And it's just about putting that work in and just keeping on going. That's kind of what our mantra is. We just want more people to try it and just stick with it,
It's funny because, I can relate to that from a running point of view.
Yeah.
Like, people look at me now, and when I started running, which was back, I don't think you ever start running. Kind of always throughout your life, you know how to run and to move. But I hadn't run for like 6 years. Started running with the Active Boys crew. I remember before I done my first 5K, I thought, fuck, I've got to do like a trial run before I rock up on Sunday. So I tried to do 2Ks, I got 800 metres in, I was like, this is fucking shit. I was like, this stuff's fucked, like, I'm just going for the social thing. And then all of a sudden, you just like, for me, it was having purpose to run for the marathon, because we announced the marathon for charity, and then purpose just fueled progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck, isn't it an infectious feeling when you feel yourself getting better at something? And the better you get and the more time you put into it,
100%.
you just start to love it. Like, it becomes a passion.
And you've always got that goal you can chase. You've got to go, you want to get to here. Like, if you're running, you've got, a certain amount of kilometres and at a certain time. Where in jiu-jitsu, you want to get to that next stripe or that next belt. Yeah, you've got things to look forward to. I think it's such a healthy thing in life to have. Like, we're always looking like, oh, I can't wait to get my blue belt, can't wait to get my purple belt. Where people that might not have that in their life, they've got nothing to look forward to, And I wish, I know from me being like that, like
no purpose in a
no
sense.
purpose in a way, like, and I didn't know, what's on the weekend. I don't know, like, you didn't have something to look forward to, and now I've just got this,
drive.
purpose, this drive to get somewhere.
You know what I think too? I think, I know for me as an individual, and I'll speak individually here and see if you guys agree. But I love the idea of having a coach
Yes.
Someone that guides you, someone that, you know, because you don't always know best, and that's the beauty about learning something new. Like, I had the pleasure of working with Benny Seymour throughout my run prep last year, and Benny and I have become great mates in the process, and respect that guy like a brother. He's done so much for me. But to have his guidance and to have someone who kind of tailors and sort of like paves a path for you to move along and to follow and to learn from, and to put your own ego aside at times, because I think we all need someone that says, hey, slow down. Or, hey,
all the time.
You're being a bit lazy here, or you're lacking discipline here.
100%.
You need to push yourself or step up. And, you know, it's funny talking to my brother-in-law. Shout out to Cal. Big Cal McLennan, one of the most humble. Hey, there you go, mate. You've never told me that one. So he's too humble.
Yeah.
And he talks about it where he's done some coaching in some of the kids' classes at Gracie, and, you know, Cal's been doing it for a few years now, but he said he feels like his knowledge is far greater than where it used to be. Like, obviously, as you begin, you know, you start with very little knowledge, you acquire so much over time. But he said, as a coach, then you really realise how little you know. And then he said, as opposed to where, is it Marcus that coaches you guys out there at Shore Harbour? And he goes, where Marcus can just look at me and say one thing, and I'm like, okay, now I've got it. And it's just that knowledge that's acquired over time. And I think we all need a teacher or like a mentor or a coach.
Role model in a sense.
100%.
And especially in martial arts, when you know, like both of our coaches, they could just fuck us up. And like even Big Cow's a monster. Like he's huge. And then you got Marcus, he's like 65 kilos, whatever. And just knowing that guy has so much knowledge, and he could just destroy you anytime he wants. And he chooses to teach you and bring you up. It's just, it's humbling.
It is, and back to that as well, like you said, you don't realise, but they're watching everything. You might not realise that they're watching you, but they know. He's got nearly upwards of 200 students, maybe more. I don't know the exact numbers, but he knows every single one of them. He knows all their personalities. He knows, in the same as like with your coach, he knows when you're being a little bit lazy,
100%.
when you could run a bit further, a little bit faster. Like they know you, and it's like you said, it's nice to know. And they want to see you succeed too. It's nice to know you've got someone in your corner.
100%.
Bro, we got to come for one of your active boys.
100%.
100%. You know, the crew is so good, and it's growing like crazy. You know, fucking lot of shout outs here today. Shout out to the boys. Jared and Dill. Those guys have created literally what was an idea for them to get off the piss on Saturday nights, and like that encouragement just to be up early and to change their life has become a way of life for so many people. And it's similar with any sport. I've watched myself walk in there and come out a different person. I've watched, because I went through a period. I was a guy growing up, and I'll give props to my younger self. Growing up, I was a sporting savage. 7 days a week I trained, and I trained viciously. Always wanted to be better. So hungry to grow, to learn, I sprinted a lot as a kid and done a lot of beach athletics and sprinting tournaments, and I loved training and I loved leveling up. And I hit this point at probably, I think my downfall was walking into a commercial gym and trying to, I was a PT at the time, and fresh face, like 16, 17-year-old, trying to build muscle. And it just wasn't for me. And
we're the same.
I think it was just chasing this superficial look, or this way of looking good, and that representing that you're somehow fit or healthy. But it's so different. And I missed that competitive edge that I had for so many years, because I wasn't competing in something, and I wasn't being challenged by competitors around me or people around me. And I found that when I probably went for like a good 7 years there, where I was doing things, but I wasn't necessarily ever put myself in a position where I was like knuckling down on training or consistent in one thing for a long time until I found that running again. And it changed my life for the better.
It's just a passion for it as well, which
100%.
We were in love with footy. Like we were footy. And then towards the end, like I couldn't get myself out of the house to go train, and I hated it. I hated everything of it. Like, and then we started martial arts, and that's when we sort of fell out of love with it. And now we're keen every day, 5 days a week. We're training.
What we love so much about martial arts is, we were talking about it earlier, you're getting fit. It's fitness. You're growing your health, your physical health, but you're also learning at the same time. It stimulates your brain, and
100%.
We all know exercise is good for your brain, releasing endorphins. But I think that's why we get so addicted to it, because you, like you said, the ranking system, and you're growing.
Feel yourself getting better.
You're learning, and in that moment when you're training, that's all you're thinking about.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about, if you're, say you're going through a bad stage, you might be some depressed or whatever, or your mind's just going through the roof. That's all you're thinking about. But when you're in that gym, the martial arts gym, all you're thinking about is training at that point in time.
Yeah, don't get fucking
worrying about
choked
this
out.
dude trying to kill me.
Yeah.
On that, it's the group mentality too. Everyone's there. Like, it's very selfish sport in a way because you're there by yourself. You've got no one to blame but yourself. But it's such a team environment that everyone is there to help you. Like, they might have little tricks that they've found from other gyms and everyone's more than happy to help.
Yeah.
You know, because they want to see you succeed, and it's nice to have that. I don't know. It's just it's really, really good. It's humbling.
And you wouldn't expect it from a martial arts gym. That's
what we're trying to break down the stigma of.
Yeah.
I've got to say, when I walked into NGC, which is now Fightworks, shout out to that crew, great lads, and very smart guys. Mitch Brisbane, the owner of that now, and formerly Brian as well. Yeah. I walked in there and there's a little bit of nerve because I'm a really confident, outgoing guy. Yeah. So I feel like I can walk into anywhere and be super confident. But when you're walking into somewhere where you don't have a skill set, you're a fucking pure rookie.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a little bit nervous here because, I don't know how I'm going to fit into this crew. I don't know how I'm going to handle this training. But I've never, ever been so wrong. But you walk into a martial arts gym and there are no egos because they very quickly are found and driven out.
100%.
They're either driven out or they say, hey, fucking humble yourself.
Yeah.
And you're here now to learn. You're not here to be a dickhead. 100%. And, got to give credit to all of the coaches, the mentors, the senseis, whatever we call them within our certain gyms or setups that, I tell you what, they seem to know how to create a culture.
Good environment. And that's another thing too. The first thing you think of if you want to get fit is, like you said, a commercial gym. You go to the gym. A lot of people don't like it. Or a lot of people say to us, like, they feel funny going in there because there's a lot of egos, and that's generalising. It's obviously not all gyms, but generalising these big guys, and you got to, you feel like intimidated. There's a lot of intimidation, and then they go, well, if the commercial gym's like that, imagine what a fighting gym, like jiu-jitsu or boxing or something. But they don't realise, and that's the stigma we're trying to break down. Like 100%. We thought that too. We were the exact same. It took us 4 or 5 years to step foot in a gym, and since that day, we couldn't, it's the best thing that we've ever done. And we just hope that we can change that for so many people out there. Please, that many people in Wollongong that, are the same. They're scared to walk into that gym, and we'll say, come with us to the first class. We'll take you to Gracie. You can do free lessons. A lot of places will let you do a week's trial for free, and just walk in and see what it's like. I promise you, it's not what you think it is.
It's just starting. It's the same, and I feel like a lot of people live with, they want something, they want to do something, and it might be a change of career path, like going and starting the podcast. You might want to do something so bad, and it's just about starting. And it's never as bad as what you think, or it's exceeds your expectations.
Hardest part is that first step.
Well, shout out Jocko Willink, actually. I was reading his book this morning, and it's the same thing. He just said go. No matter, everyone don't research, just go, do it, and then you'll see.
100%. 100% agree. Like I said, I'm someone who's never walked into a jiu-jitsu gym. But
you got to come though.
Yeah, I honestly have to because I'm fascinated by the sport and the way it moves. And I found myself lately, it was actually the first time I ever watched him or come across him was his UFC debut, Gracie.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And and I found myself oh fuck, I'm fascinated by this guy. And I think I knew the Gracie name. Obviously. Even as someone, like I said, who wasn't a fan of jiu-jitsu as such and always enjoyed the striking elements of MMA, I found myself remembering back to those early moments in those UFC docos where we seen, his family and that pedigree enter the ring and, in the gi and it was so foreign to the sport, and these guys towel up these big, bulky strikers. And back then the UFC, it was so weird because it was just two completely different characters in there. I remember seeing Ken Shamrock run in a pair of fucking Speedos. And just shoes, and it's so weird. But then seeing that, and I remember researching him, and I'm fascinated by that dude. Have you watched his that little mini doco, Munchies?
No.
Does he eat sushi all the time?
His diet and his routine is to say, how's this, right? So Gracie, if you don't know him, jiu-jitsu pedigree, and his family is basically the founding 100%. Fathers of jiu-jitsu.
Hicks and Gracie's dad.
And they reckon he's a badass. So cool. Yeah. And his day, right, so he wakes up, he eats very light. So he's a pescatarian. So he only eats fish. He doesn't eat any meat or chicken. Yeah. And he eats eggs too, I think. But he eats basically vegetarian or vegan outside of, a little bit of fish and eggs. So he wakes up, he has 2 bits of toast. He goes and he does his he's run and he's swim and he's bike. Like he trains a bit of triathlon stuff too for his endurance, and then he'll have like a little bit of like beans. Like he has the smallest meal, like literally you could fit it in a cup.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have like 10 of that at that time, right? And then he has a bit of juice, and then he goes, and basically his philosophy is he eats fuck all and really drinks fuck all until he's finished his jiu-jitsu and his boxing work at night. Then he'll like rehydrate, get a bit of sushi in because it's light. Then he has a massive breakfast burrito at like 1, 2 in the morning.
It's almost like he earns it. He tries to earn it.
And I don't know if it's that samurai mentality of like earning everything you get, or where like the minute I finish a run, I'm like, oh, peanut butter and poached is coming my way. Like, it's really funny, and it's, you know, he says he could probably train himself to eat or work out a different way, but it just kind of works for him.
100%.
And it's so cool. Like, it's so cool. Interesting.
It's funny you say that about you eating after your runs and stuff, because on the way here, we're at Cows before we come, and we're all just talking. We're like, fuck, man, I could go some breakfast. And we knew we were coming here to eat breakfast with you, and then we're just like, what are we talking about? Why are we having breakfast? Like, Cows like, almost woke up, made pancakes. Like, oh, bro, why are you making pancakes? We're about to go eat breakfast. It's just crazy. But
going back on that as well, the Gracie's actually developed a diet. It's called the Gracie Diet. You can get it on, like, you can actually get it. So basically Helio, which is, I get confused with, there's so many Gracies, but the grandfathers that started it, Helio and Carlos.
Have you heard how many kids those dudes have?
What
if they had 22 kids?
Insane. And there's so many, even like Marcus, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been listening to, you know, such and such Gracie talking about this, and he's like, don't even, like, I don't know, there's too many of them to know whose dad was this person, that person. Anyway, everything they eat is so specialised to their jiu-jitsu training, and a lot of Crohn's a good example, because they, like you said, they eat exactly only what's good for them and what works for them. And his dad, Hickson, which is like the jiu-jitsu goat, he also does a lot of breathing exercises and stuff.
Crone does that as well.
He got a documentary called Breathe. You can watch it on YouTube.
Breathe.
Hickson, and he does, like, you've probably seen the videos.
The diaphragm work.
Yes, the diaphragm, and the way his stomach moves, and they reckon like breathing is such a, probably obviously for running as well, and it's such a dynamic thing that we don't think about.
90% of people don't do it properly as well.
100%.
Like, people don't realise your nose is meant for breathing, your mouth's meant for eating, but how many people breathe out their mouth? Like,
you know what it is, right? And I become fascinated with breathing through Wim Hof.
Exactly.
And to be honest, it made me aware of it, but it didn't make me do it, right? And I found myself in more recent times, actually, like we were talking about it before, like coming through a bit of a stressful period to start the year where life's great, but there's a few stresses around that I'm working my way through. And, you know, sitting there and like when you're a bit stressed, you think, fuck, I haven't taken a minute just to sit and relax here and breathe. So I started to implement a few protocols that I feel like relax me and allow me to become more conscious of where I'm at in the day. So of a morning, I put a podcast in, I try not to look at my phone or be too visualised by it for the first few hours. I go and do my run, I jump in the ocean, I have my coffee and I sit and I make my brekkie, and while I'm doing that I read and put my phone away. But I find myself then, because I've not been stimulated by something all the time, I'm more focused on just getting some air in, breathing.
On being present. And
deep breathing. And same overnight, like trying to do the same thing too, but don't you realise how funny it is? It's literally the only function that keeps, like, it's the function that keeps you alive. It's the most important thing. The main fuel that you need to survive is oxygen, and we just don't think about the way that we take it in.
100%.
We think about the amount of protein we take in, fats, carbs, the vitamins, the fruit, the veg, whether it's bad food or processed, but we just don't think about how we breathe.
No one pays attention to it at all. And I find if I'm ever feeling anxious or stressed or something like that, all I do is breathe, because I'm pretty into Wim Hof and cold therapy and shit like that as well. And all I do, if I'm feeling nervous or about anything, I just focus on my breath. And you don't realise, like, you don't need to take breaths. Like, it's more about your exhale. Have a deep exhale, and then you can sit there for 10-20 seconds. If you've done the Wim Hof things, you can realise you hold your breath for like 2.5 minutes without even knowing. It's such an underrated thing that no one pays attention to.
We've almost become really out of touch with our origins as humans. Hey, like, I was speaking about this with Cal and my sister Shania recently. They love to camp and they love to get out in the outdoors, and you know, I was a bit of a soft real estate agent there for a bit, where I got too comfortable sitting around the suit or a nice pair of cozy chinos and sipping on too many lattes, and you just become very comfortable living modern life. And I'm like now seeking opportunities to go and get away from technology, get into my own head a little bit, like, and seeing what I can work on internally to get the best out of myself, and breathing and being physically able and fit. And, you know, fighting is a big part of prehistoric nature too.
Exactly.
And that adrenal rush and knowing that you need to fight to survive and hunt to survive and all of these things. I just think it's fascinating diving into that, and I find myself really curious about it.
100%. And that's another thing why, like you said, there's some people that are into NFL, there's some people into, you know, whatever they're into, but everyone can get around fighting because it's in our blood. It's like, it's a part of nature. Like women back in the, you know, the day, they looked for the big strong dude that was, you know, going to protect them, and you know, everything revolves around that. All of us, you look at like the old Vikings and stuff, and you're in awe of them because they were just so
warriors, man.
You love, but when you look back at the roots of it, it's the dominant, strong, confident guy. You know, when it's, like you said, someone walks into the room, you're looking at them because they're the confident guy, the big guy, like you said about Mike Tyson and that. And I think that's why we can all get around fighting. You know what I mean? And
I think even on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's not always the biggest guy. It's the guy that's like if you look at a lot of superheroes, like on the inside of my arm, I've got Statue of David.
Yeah.
Because it's like that story, overcoming greater objects or overcoming greater challenges, and it's you know, Captain America.
Yeah.
Great example. It's just a small dude who is a little bit and transforms, and it's you know, it's the same with like a guy like a Spider-Man or whoever it is. We kind of like those underdog stories. And the person who symbolises strength but doesn't 100%. Exactly look like it.
Yeah, so that's with jiu-jitsu, that's their like the most. Like I've rolled with, I don't want to use me as an example, but say I'm like 70 kilos, I've rolled with people 100 kilos, and you look at them, you're like, oh, man, and then I've tapped him because like the skill, it's not all power or strength or anything, it's skill as well.
Rogan talks about that, doesn't he? He says it's really the only form of martial arts where the smaller guy can really beat any bigger guy if they don't have the skill.
And have an advantage too. There's an advantage to it. Like same thing, you don't want to do any name drops, but we've got NRL players that come down and train with us and stuff. And you almost have an advantage, me rolling with them, because I'm smaller, I'm quicker, you know, they're obviously a lot stronger, but you've got that flexibility and stuff. And like you said, every body type can make it work.
100%.
There's advantages to
being smaller.
Every body type. There's advantages to being big, small, and applies to everyone.
That's great, isn't
we
it?
encourage everyone to walk through.
Fascinating. Wait, let's dive into the pro side of it all. We spoke about it before. How exciting is the UFC right now?
Man.
Like it is. It's literally insane how you can sit there and you can match make for days. You can almost be, you know, it's funny because Cal and I spoke about it before. Like, we had to kind of get ourselves out of the routine of like being too excited by every fight because you just never spend any time outside the house. Like, I'd sit there and just watch fights for days.
That's what we do.
We're in such an it's your job.
Yeah.
It's your job. That's the excuse. It's our job. You know.
It's unmatched though. Like we said off camera, it's unmatched for excitement. Like even compared to boxing. Like I know we box 5 days a week, but it's unmatched. Nothing matches the excitement of
raw
MMA
combat,
fight.
man.
And the way they promote the fights, like
storylines.
Anyone that fights Habib, you think they're going to be the guy to beat Habib. Like Justin Gaethje, all these
we were
guys.
Convinced,
You sure of it?
Dustin the bad boy,
Yeah.
You just think, and the way they build them up, it's so entertaining. And I think it's just the way it's evolved in the last 10 years. It's just remarkable to see. It's
other thing as well. Like if say the Dragons come out and play a game and they have a bad game, whatever, they've always got next week to come back.
Yeah.
These guys have a few months to sit and think,
and sometimes years before they get another chance at a big fight. Or
your favourite fighter, Darren Till, he's played. He's such a good fighter.
I love Till.
He's a champion, but he did his knee with the Rob Whittaker fight, and then he's just broken his foot. And then so he's every time he goes to come back, so you don't know when. That's why you have to sit down and watch that fight because if you miss the last Till fight, who knows when he's coming back?
And
so
100%.
It's the way it makes you feel as well. Like 2 examples I can think of was Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstreich. We were so nervous. If we had a camera, I think it was 20 seconds, he knocked him out. We were jumping, hugging, man. And then on the other side, Conor McGregor at the start of the year gets knocked out. We're in silence. And Rob Whittaker, we went and watched at 248 in Melbourne, Adesanya. We love him too, but watching Rob Whittaker get knocked out, the feeling like inside you, it's just like, it's insane. Where if the Roosters lose, I'm a Roosters fan as well.
Yeah.
Like it hurts, but then they're playing next week sort of thing.
It's like last week's fight. Usman Burns.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you see, everyone was talking about, a lot of Usman's training partners were saying, and both of their training partners were saying Burns is
He's got the edge.
he's got the edge.
Yeah.
And you see him strike him in that first round, and I'm like, oh fuck, this could be over here.
Yeah.
Like
Then
we
all of a
talked
sudden-
about the promotion of it. Me and Beau were on Burns' nuts. We thought he,
Well, like,
we thought he was the guy.
Well, in the jiu-jitsu world, he is the
That's
guy,
right.
right?
as well.
He's the man, and we were sure like he's gonna get it done. And then you see Usman go through some adversity. I think that was Usman's. We touched on it in our podcast. It's his best performance for the fans.
Yeah.
Seeing
Yeah.
him go through some adversity and come back out the other side like an underdog story, like we talk about.
Well,
It's the most attractive. to
and
people.
when you're so dominant like Habib in that, it's kind of, you get complacent with it. You're not as invested. Obviously when you get to a certain point, but with Kamaru, everyone's saying he's boring. He's just a foot stomper and stuff. And for him, like you said, to go through it, it's good to see.
Well, I don't think any athlete is. And here's always my argument for GOAT status, right? You can't be the GOAT until you've been tested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my thing, because character's a big part of it.
Yes.
And we've seen it with Conor McGregor, right?
Yeah.
Where he rips through the UFC,
Mm.
but the minute he cops that shot,
Yeah.
and
Gives
like
his neck up.
you remember that first Diaz fight,
Yeah.
where he cops that shot, and you go, he's
Hang on.
rocked.
Yeah.
He's human.
How does he respond to this?
Yeah.
And he doesn't respond that well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's the
Always.
demeanour. Actually, there was one in the fight last weekend or the weekend before, Usman and Burns. In that fight, Burns come out, rocked him. You see in his eyes, man, he's going. And then he gets hit with that shot, and his demeanour just was gone.
Changed.
And it was like two different fights. And then he was like, Tim, it's wild,
I
man.
think that's why everyone gravitates toward GSP in that GOAT conversation, because
100%.
he's bounced back. He's had 2 losses to Matt Serra, Matt Hughes, and he's avenged
Avenged
them.
both of them.
And we've seen how he come through adversity. He got cut from the UFC after his first loss, come back, and then he's lost again, and then he's won, avenged both fights.
I love George,
Yeah.
man. He's
Right.
just.
Too.
I think, you could probably have a similar argument. For me, if you talk GOAT, I always say, it's hard to question Khabib, like we said, because of what he's done, but I always say GSP Jones.
Yeah.
Both guys are so well rounded.
100%.
And
So well rounded.
Both on opposite sides of the spectrum. Like if you look at outside, like GSP, pure martial artist,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then Jones, all these out of the cage.
I think that's
nonsense.
Yeah.
he's a perfect role model for GSP's a perfect role model for the true martial artist. He was bullied as a kid, so his parents put him into.
I love his voice too.
Yeah.
I was bullied as a
Yes.
kid.
Are you intoxicated, mate?
And just like you said, goes through adversity and becomes, UFC
Yeah.
champion.
Well, that's how I get my favourite fighters, I've noticed. Like, when they lose and how they come back. That's why I love Rob Whittaker so much. He's so humble, but then you got, like, Deontay Wilder. He's got every excuse in the book. He doesn't handle that loss well. I used to like Wilder, and now I'm like, oh. Anthony Joshua on the same thing.
That's
He
why I love
loses and he's
Tyson
back.
Fury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They come back, and through the adversity, you sort of learn who they are.
You know what? And I think you gravitate to personalities and that sort of thing, because it mimics certain moments in our life.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's funny because off the back of, I've had a bit of a weird time the first few months of this year, post marathon, right? That was the best day of my life.
Yeah.
It was a high of my life. It felt like 24 years of my life amounted to that one moment.
Mm.
And if you don't know my story and you're listening to this, you go, what the fuck, mate? You just ran a
Yeah.
marathon, get over it. But for me, it was like years of health struggles and
So much.
and things to get there, and to have my family with me and my dad next to me on my bike, and to get in and see my mum, my sister, their partners and all my mates around me and everyone rallying around me at the end there. But there was definitely that moment where, 35 Ks and I'm like, okay, I'm in a lot of pain now. And I cramped at 26 Ks.
Yeah.
And I laughed because I was like, oh, I got a day ahead of me, eh? But I'm kind of glad I did, because people say, the last month I had a bleed in the lungs, a little issue with my calf, and I had gout.
Mm.
And people go, do you wish you had a perfect prep? And I'm like, I kind of don't, because at the time you think, oh, I wish this prep was perfect. But it makes for the story, and it shows you what you're made of.
Yes.
And now I found it hard that, like, without a marathon coming up until October now, I'm like, what's that next challenge?
Yeah.
Mm.
Because I live for those moments. I think once you've had them, you live for them.
Yep.
And you understand what a fighter must feel when he walks out and hears that crowd roar.
Yeah.
Or what he must feel when he hits the deck and he's got to quickly pick himself back up. Like, I had moments 40 Ks in But I was just all over the shop. There's a video of me running through Puckies, and it looks like I had 40 schooners. I don't even drink, but it looks like I had 40 schooners.
Yeah.
And like I've never run a day in my life. Like I was in bad shape.
Yeah.
But then you hit that point where you come out of that, and you're moving, and seeing me move that last K, like I can watch that time and time again, because you realise that there's something inside of you that has that will to survive, that will to thrive if you just push through the pain.
Yeah.
And it's the same with fighting.
100%.
Joe Rogan talks on that too a lot. Doing something that you don't need to do. You don't need to go out there and run. We don't need to go to training. But it's something about putting yourself through hardship is so good for your mental health. And like you said, having something to look forward to as well. It's so underrated. You can't explain how, what it means to have something to look forward to.
And doing that hard stuff makes it easier next time.
Yes.
So when you're going through that, you can get through
And
it,
also
sort of thing.
not doing it makes it easier to not do the next one. So
Yeah. If I miss training on Monday, I'm like, a bit tired. Tuesday comes, I can miss Tuesday.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you go Monday, then Tuesday, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to keep
and
going.
like you said, you learn about yourself. You know that you can go. Like our boxing coach does it too. And it's the worst thing. I hate him for it at the time. He goes, one last round and you are done.
You put it all.
Like, this is it. Go as hard as you can. One last round. You finish it like, thank God. He goes, all right, one more round. You go
And
and
you're thinking,
and
you bastard.
You bastard. But you can always push through. And then when you finish that, he goes, all right, run 5 laps of the gym.
Yeah.
And you always do it. You think you can't, but you've always, like you said, you can always push through, and it's good to know that about yourself.
For sure, and that's exactly what we were talking about before we come here. David Goggins, Cow, because you were watching his podcast with Rogan, of course, and he talked about he did 100, done the 100-mile race over 8 weekends, 8 in a row, and he says his last mile was his quickest mile out of the 100. And it shows how much you have in the reserve that you don't tap into.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, right? One guy that I followed a little bit through my run prep journey was a guy from Sydney, Ned Brockman, who sort of was... I don't even know how he come to my attention. I think it was through Hannah Leonard, who ran with us. She'd done a couple of runs with him, and he was on a journey to do 50 marathons in 50 days whilst working as an electrician on site, right? So insane. He's getting up really early or doing them late in the arvo, and... marathon's a big feat to do that every day. Now this guy had a running background, like he's not a pro runner, but he's done some big runs. And I was listening to him on a podcast 2 days before my mara, because I was like, I just want to get in that headspace. And he ran his first 2, and he said the third marathon, it was I think 4.5 hours, which was slower than mine. Right? And that kind of shocked me because I was like, oh. And he's like, but then at a certain point in time, like he's like, and then I'm starting to think, I need to pace up a bit here, because if they're taking me 4.5 hours every day, I'm going to be fucked. Like I'm not going to have time, or I'm going to run out of juice. But then eventually, shout out to fucking Ducati out the day. Jesus Christ.
It's about as good as James Mullen.
Yeah, exactly. And I realised that, like, he said there was a certain point in time where he was in pain and he had tears all over, and his mantra was like, if it's not broken, you can probably run on it.
Yeah.
But he goes, at a certain point in time, your body just adapts, and it's like the flip of a switch. And all of a sudden, you're getting quicker, you're getting faster, you're getting stronger. And to prove that, he ran the last one sub 3 hours.
Wow.
Which is quick. It's 4 minute 15 Ks.
I can't even do over 2 Ks.
Oh, insane, right?
That's quick.
Yeah, that's
And
insane.
quick. And it just proves that theory, that if you put yourself in that position enough times, you will 100% adapt and get better. You just have to be willing to go through the pain and push the excuses aside. And we said it as well before. Once you've got that discipline, you know whether you're fooling yourself or not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, I know now that if I go, okay, I'm a little bit in a bad place, I shouldn't be running today, I know it's coming from me understanding my body, not from me wanting to be lazy, because I look forward to the hard work now.
Exactly.
Like, I've done 8 weeks of running 20 Ks every Wednesday. So I know what it feels like to go through the pain and to become comfortable and excited for that. And it's funny. I just love mentally testing myself now. It's built like this infectious spirit for like wanting to chase that challenge.
100%.
Like you said, it's all about doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you do it over and over, then it just becomes easier and easier.
And not being discouraged by one bad
That's the
experience
thing,
either.
That's the biggest thing we want to get across. Like,
and you probably got a lot of inspiration after listening to that guy in Sydney before your marathon. And
100%. And it's funny because for me, like with that last month being a bit of a muck around, like prep wasn't perfect, and we'd planned to run another 30 or a 35er, probably 3-4 weeks out from the event, which got scrapped because of my issues.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'd run probably 6 or 7 weeks out from the event, a 30K, and it was so tough. I mentally got him. I ran with my mate Jet Jones, and Jet's a young whippersnapper, like he's 19, and I think Jet's Strava log, like his whole run journey a month out from the marathon was 6 weeks out. He ran a 30K with me, a 5K about 2 weeks later, a 20K, and then a 5K, and he went into a marathon. Like the guy's a nutcase.
Savage.
But we ran the 30 together, and I remember we were running. We took a different route. We're like, oh, we'll change it up. So we ran through the hills in Kirraville near the uni here in Wollongong, and I was thinking, oh, God, this elevation's not going too good on the legs. I feel a bit sore here. And we're out on the old highway, the Princess Highway, like running past the car yards and Macca's out at Ferry Meadow.
Yeah.
And Jet goes, what are we, about 20 in? I looked down at my watch and I go, 12. And just then it mentally defeated me.
Yeah.
And the rest of that run, that next 18Ks, I was in my head.
Yes.
And so I think, to my next point, surrounding yourself with people who are extremely motivating and you're accountable to.
Yes.
So we were out there on the marathon day, and I was lucky I had Jet with me that day for the 30 because it would have been a struggle by myself. But out on the marathon day, we had for the first 28Ks, that first 2 laps, unbelievable height. Like, shout out to Joe Plum. Joe Plum was like just leading a chant the whole way, getting all the boys yelling, screaming, laughing, singing, and the boys and the girls. And, it was so good. But I think after lap 2, everyone was like, okay, I need to get myself through this.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of gets a little quieter, zones in a little bit. But yeah, it's a great feeling to overcome challenges. But let's talk UFC at the moment. So many exciting matchups to happen. I know you guys have favourite fighters matchups you'd like to see. Like I said, if you're tuning into this, we're recording this on the 20th of Feb, so we've had a few very exciting weeks of fighting to kick off 2021. What are the matchups you'd like to see? And let's talk about some of the exciting divisions within the UFC.
I think the next month of fights, March, is just going to be amazing.
The best.
And all the fights we talk about that we want to see are honestly all happening. Volko and Ortega, Francis and Stipe.
Yes.
All the belts are on the line.
Adesanya becoming double champ. If you're into.
I feel like there's so many storylines this year.
Let's jump into quickly there. You said Francis Stipe.
Yes.
How do you see that going?
Bro, we're super biased. We're the biggest Francis.
So we love him. And following his journey, if you listen to him on Joe Rogan,
I haven't yet.
I recommend, man.
Listen to that. His life story that he's gone through. He hasn't been training for that long. So when he's gone into that first, he's just knocking everyone out. And he's gone into this first fight a little bit cocky. He stopped training with his coach, like his main coaches, Dewey Cooper and stuff. Started thinking he had it all made. I come in heavier than usual as well. Not heavier, same weight, but not the right weight, if that makes sense. Didn't cut down properly. And thought he was going to walk out and knock him out like everyone else. So if you watch the fight, you can see him throwing just looping shots. And obviously Stipe is a pedigree boxer, evaded everything. But now that he's had that, and then he went through that stage, I don't know if you watched the Derek Lewis fight, it was 15 minutes. How many punches through? It was something like
it was so boring.
Yeah.
So boring. And it was just, Derek Lewis had a bad back, so he couldn't throw. But Francis was so in his own head because he had that loss, he was scared of gassing out and stuff. He's corrected all those issues he had in the Stipe fight, and I honestly think that he can get it done. Honestly,
so
and like we said, not hopefully he does, but for the division, we got Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis this weekend, number 1 contender fight. But if Stipe wins, he's going to have another year off until he's back. He's always taken a lot of time. We've got Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis there. John Jones is coming into the class now. Yeah. When are we going to see these matchups? Whereas if Francis wins, he's fighting every 3 months. We can imagine, Francis, Johnny Bones.
That's the fight. If I could make any fight, that's it.
And then you've got
or Adesanya Jones,
man. If Izzy can beat Jan and becomes double champ, and then Jones somehow gets the belt in heavyweight, imagine, the first triple champ. Izzy going up to heavyweight.
Here's the thing, right? With that fight, I'm so excited by the idea of a Jones Izzy fight. I think we've seen. Yeah. Brendan Schaub spoke about it on I think it was on Food Truck where he said you don't actually realise how big Izzy is until he's standing next to you.
Yeah.
And he's quite a lean guy. but he's not really interested in getting too much bigger. Like, he wants to stay lean and
Exactly.
sharp because, you know, if you've only really tuned into Izzy's MMA career, like, go back and watch his kickboxing fights.
Yeah.
That guy is just a highlight reel and a
Yeah.
half. And like him against Jones,
It's a
that
dream,
excites me
man.
so much. Like, two guys who are so well rounded in their stand up skills. You're gonna get elbows, you're gonna get kicks, knees, not just punches and a few leg kicks. Like, those guys can throw it from any direction.
It's probably going to be the biggest fight ever. But I love that Izzy's going up to be double champ. There's a perfect scenario. So if Izzy goes up, beats Jan Blachowicz, Jones goes up, beats the winner of Stipe and Francis, then you got a champ
Perfect
versus
matchup.
champ. Izzy as a light heavyweight versus Jones as a heavyweight.
Do you think that happens though? Like, in my head, I go, will Izzy take that step to heavyweight? You think?
I think. Well, he has.
Or would Jones come back down, regain his title at light
Yeah.
heavyweight, and go, well, I'm
That's
double
right.
champ holding
Yeah.
both belts? Because I feel like that's more favoured towards Izzy then.
Yeah.
I just think Jones, you know, if he's up at that heavyweight and he can put muscle on. Like, if you've seen his brothers,
bro.
that
Watching
man's
his-
got the
watching
genetics.
his Instagram lately.
He's yoked at the
Bro.
moment. too.
He looks
juicy,
big.
bro.
Even Izzy's looking a little
Yeah,
bit
he's
fuller.
bigger.
Yeah.
He's looking fuller.
I have to agree with you there, but he has fought at heavyweight before in kickboxing. So
Okay, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
and he doesn't put the weight on. So he just goes in as a leaner. Obviously, there's limits, so you have to weigh 206.
Okay.
206.
Yeah.
So it's obviously the class is 206 to 245,
65.
265. Sorry. So as long as you're in that, so you will have to put some weight on, but nothing crazy. But yeah, he's done it before. But obviously, like, he hasn't done it against the John Jones.
Well,
So.
what's Izzy at now? Do we know what weight he's at right now
I
for
reckon,
this fight?
I reckon he'd be bigger than that at the moment. I reckon
I
he'd
would-
probably cut down to the 206 limit for the light heavyweight.
Yeah.
He's a big.
He is big. He's big. He doesn't cut that much though. He doesn't. He just says he doesn't have to
Because
cut that
I
much. to get
thought
to
he
185.
almost looks like he walks around pretty similar to what he fights at.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think he does. He
I
says
think he
we-
walks at about 210 or something,
Okay.
cuts to 185, which
Like
is
out of
not.
camp,
Yeah, out of camp.
210.
I
I tell you
mean,
what,
but yeah.
aside from the skill set, I could not be a fighter because I hate just controlling my diet.
Oh,
I'm the biggest
Bro,
pig.
that's our biggest thing.
We've got
100%.
We're struggling, guys.
I'm the biggest chocolate eater of all time.
I had that much chocolate at mum's house last night.
bro.
It's really funny.
so
I
good.
love it.
And even just cutting down to our, we've got some comps coming up for jiu-jitsu, and I've only got to cut like 2 or 3 kilos, but it's like such a mental battle because I'm just such a foodie. Oh,
100%. It's the
yeah,
fight
that-
before the fight.
100%.
You know what, boys? Start training for a marathon.
Oh, no,
Yourself
yeah,
out.
yeah.
I was eating so much food last year and I lost 12 kilos.
Wowie.
12 kilos. I went from 88 to 76.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm about 80 now. I'm sitting about 80. I was 79 this morning. That's before a big
The
brekkie here.
PB.
But I find I comfortably now sort of sit around that 79 to 80 and a half mark.
Mm.
But I eat I can't stop eating.
That's
You know,
Right.
so that's another thing I give credit to these guys. Like, imagine cutting, 10, 15 pounds,
Yeah.
even more in some guys' cases.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Listening to what Aljamain walks around in
Bro,
Yeah.
off
he
season,
cuts so
and then,
much.
my God,
I know.
how could you feel good?
I know.
Yeah,
Going in there and taking. Well, Gilbert Burns is a perfect example. When he was fighting that 155, he was killing himself to get down. Like, at every shot he was getting hit with, he was getting buzzed. So because
Yeah.
his your brain's 80% water, so you're dehydrating your brain.
And your brain
Um,
thrives on fat.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Your brain
So
is just fat.
If fat, yeah. So you get hit once, boom, like they're starting to rattle. Now that he's at 170, he can eat those shots a bit better. So
Yeah.
there's a science to it. It's insane.
Let's talk about the welterweight division for a minute because for me that is the most exciting division. Personally, for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
it's the most exciting division in the sport. You've got, Usman's done what he's just done and really showed that he's got what it takes to cop the shots
Mm.
and then control the fight and get it back in his favour. Burns is still there.
Oh, yeah.
He had his
He's
moments
savage,
in
man.
that
Yeah.
fight. There is, I seen, we all sound like fucking Brendan Shaw, nut huggers here, but I was watching some of his content and listening to some stuff this morning, and I'll pull it up on my IG now. He had like this 6-fight tournament
Mm.
for the welterweight division, and it was Stephen Thompson against Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
Love that.
Love it.
And I love like Wonder Boy, like such
Oh,
a skill
great.
set.
Well,
So unique, like it's
Mm.
like Brendan says, it's hard to prepare for a guy like that because
yeah.
he's so unique within his skill set in the UFC that you kind of need to bring in karate and
Yeah.
taekwondo guys.
I think he's the guy, man, to beat Usman.
He's
Knock
like the
Usman
only
off.
one with a
So-
chance.
Because he throws shots you'll never see. you'll never see before.
And he's
you
taking
never,
defense.
like you said, you're never training for them guys. So.
100%. And then he's got Covington against Leon Edwards.
Yeah, I love that. But then Colby declined the fight.
Leon Edwards is
He's fighting Bilal Muhammad.
Bilal Muhammad's on like, what, 7 days notice?
Yeah, he fought last
Fought
weekend.
literally last weekend. He's backing up because Leon Edwards, Hamzat got COVID. So he's pulled out. Leon put his foot down and said, I'm fighting. Colby got the opportunity, said no. And then Bilal Muhammad ranked 10th, I think now.
He's 14th.
Oh, 14th, so he just got his spot and then just cracked the top 15, sorry, not top 10. Yeah, and he's jumping in, so... But yeah, in the future, that would be a great...
Can I say, I rewatched it probably 3 times now. Colby Usman.
Bro.
Crazy.
What a fight.
It's one of my favourites.
One of the best fights. One of the best fights. My respect for Colby, next level after that fight, because I think for any man to stand and trade after, I think it was at the end of round 3, he suffered that broken jaw.
Yeah.
To fight another nearly 2 full rounds with a broken jaw, of course you're going to be less. You're going to move forward less.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're trying to protect what's obviously a terrible injury. And I think Colby doesn't have enough credit after that fight.
He doesn't.
Because I think him against Usman they are the top 2 guys in my opinion.
100%.
In my opinion, like they are 1 and 2, and I think Colby's pace challenges anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm really keen to see him. I'd love to see him get in and become really active again.
Yeah.
Because I think he would 100% prove that he's that number 1 contender.
A lot of people can't see through his stick. It's the same as Triple C. They see him as a fighter, makes crazy comments, and then they hate him for that. But you put that aside.
Then they don't respect the fight.
You put that aside, and he's got so many skills. He's one of the best in the world. If Usman's not there, he's champ.
100%, I agree with that.
Really.
Yeah. Which is exciting. It's exciting, and you guys said it there. How do I say his first name? No, Kumzat.
Hamza. Everyone struggles.
I hope he
Yeah.
doesn't listen to the pod. He's fucking coming for me after that one.
I can still call him Kamzat.
Yeah.
Kamzat, Cam.
Hazmat.
Kumzat.
Bro, is it that video of Paul Felder? Is it Paul
Yeah,
Felder? He's like,
yeah.
how the fuck do I say his name?
Yeah.
Kamzat?
He's a commentator for his fight too.
He's so funny.
He's a guy who I haven't watched too much of,
Yeah.
but he seems to be the guy that in the comment section of this this proposed 6-fight tournament where Kamaru Masvidal was the last of the 3 fights there, which I want to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Where's he? Where's he fit into that picture?
Yeah.
Where's he?" And Wonderboy's that guy within that mix that's kind of sitting a little bit lower on the rankings, but probably not deservedly. Like we said, he's that guy that really could challenge Usman because of his style.
100.
But
I think
is he?
A lot of hype got taken away from Hamzat because he come in red hot, had that 2 fights in 1 week, and everyone was on his nuts, and then he got the big fight. And when you start to take on ranked guys, you can't fight on 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
Because they want a full camp, and I think that took a lot of steam out of him. Because then originally his matchup with Leon, I think Leon got sick, and then
He got COVID. Leon got COVID first, then they rematched it, and now Hamzat's had COVID. Then they rematched it again, and he's got
sick again.
Lasting effects. His lungs haven't recovered.
And that took a lot of steam out of his training.
But he come from he trains in Stockholm, Sweden, so with Alexander Gustafsson and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's only a welterweight, fights up at middleweight too sometimes, but he's given it to Gustafsson. You watch the training and they are like height difference like this, but he's given it to Gustafsson. Like he's got some awesome training partners and he's got power in those hands. He's a wrestler.
Is he Russian?
He's
he's like a mix.
I always get confused because there's Kyrgyzstan and all that. It's technically not Russia, but it's in the Russian area. So he's from around that area, but trains in Sweden.
Because they're savages.
They're savage, insane. And he's got that
dog.
cleft lip. He's got that scar. Well, not cleft lip, but he's got the scar.
The scar.
Makes him so much scarier.
So much more scary.
It's like the Joker, right? You see the scar.
Yeah.
It's just
Something about it.
He's one of those guys that you keep an eye on. Like he's lost a bit of hype now, like you said, because he hasn't fought in a minute.
Yeah.
But he's definitely
He's the wild card.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts on Masvidal, like in that picture? Because I don't know if I'm 100% convinced yet.
I agree.
I love him as a fighter and as a person. Like I've listened to his podcast and stuff. He's a real fighter, like at the heart.
Yeah.
But competing with, I don't think he can compete with Usman and Colby. They're just wrestling is just. It takes so long to build the base that they've built. They've been wrestling since I was 6 years old, and as you've seen in the Usman fight, it's another beast to handle. Like you could land that shot and knock him out. but it's getting to that shot when you're on the ground for 11 minutes. Do you have that power in the hands? So I think the fight with Usman will probably go the same way as the first one, to be honest.
The only difference would be he'll have a better gas tank.
He
might be able to throw more shots, a bit more volume, because he's obviously like prepared for the fight. But skill set wise, I feel like you can't build that much of a takedown defense in a few months. It's like you said, it's years and years of training that.
But as for a sell in the ultimate fighter coaches, best people.
That's what they're looking at doing for tough coaches.
Great. Did you guys see the photos? Darren Till and Mike Perry. Step brothers.
That's the best.
IG Live as well to each other, and they were talking smack. Some videos of it. Till's giving it to him, saying like, "You're too small. You can't compete with me." And Perry's going back. Then Till's trying to, because they're fighting actually on the same card. So the next fight card that they're both supposed to fight on, he's going to be on the undercard of Till.
Okay.
So they're going to be in the same building with each other, and Till's trying to hook up to do some training and stuff together. Yeah. So I don't know.
You know what? But let's be honest. Like for me, like I'm a bit of a Till nut hugger, but he's just a level above.
He's so good.
Bro, he's
a level above. Like he's a level above Mike Perry.
Oh yeah.
Oh
and
hell yeah.
Like there's a considerable difference there. But I loved with Darren Till, like that night where he was out on the piss and he called out Yoel Romero.
Yeah.
And then the next morning he wakes up and he goes like, I'm literally shitting myself. Like, forget about me calling Yoel out.
Yeah.
Then the minute Romero announces I'm retiring, he calls out Yoel again.
Yeah.
So good. I love that he can take the piss out of himself.
He has the
which
best.
is so rare in fighting.
I know.
Yeah.
And even to be so open, even with the Gastelum fight, he was nearly in tears after his post-fight presser, just saying like, I was so anxious. He was thinking about faking an injury.
Yeah,
so
he didn't want to walk out.
Fake an injury to pull out because he had so much time off and he was coming off a knockout loss and just coming up a weight class. There were so many things to it. He was so nervous, and he's open about it. He's a special one. Darren Till's,
Let's talk about that time off, the ring rust as they call it. We've seen probably the result of that with Conor McGregor coming back, and I think. I'm a Conor fan. I think I'm a Conor fan because I like that come up story, and it's been great to see him go from, nothing to an extremely successful person who can provide for his family, and for all of his faults, still a guy that's attractive to watch in the ring, and he is so skilled. But he has those obvious issues there when he faces those guys who can stay in there with him for a little bit longer and aren't going to rush forward at him because he is such a counter puncher and he moves so well, but. What does he do now? Like, we've seen him take that loss to Dustin, which, is no real discredit to him. Because Dustin's a badass. Like, he's world class. But he doesn't really fit into that top four of that division, does he? Like, it almost feels now that Conor's place in the UFC, and this is my personal opinion, some of the fans might attack me for this, but I think he's kind of that guy who just has those big matchup fights and fights those trilogies and, like I think I've heard a few people talking about him and Dustin doing the trilogy.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen.
I think it will happen.
Whether it should or not.
I don't think it should, and I think if Dustin takes it, it's only because it's a payday for his family.
Exactly.
Where I just don't think there's any upside for Dustin. Like he's beat him. He's in pole position to be there, the guy that takes that lightweight belt if Khabib does say that I'm up and I'm done, or even that guy who's going to get in there and probably have the best crack at actually winning it off Khabib if he did come back. I just feel like it's an unnecessary risk for him to take that fight.
All it is money. But like in saying that, for Conor, I think if Conor can come back and beat Dustin in the trilogy, I think that takes him to another level above again. Like.
But the risk there is if he loses.
If he loses, then he's sort of done.
Do you think that took a bit of his mystique away, seeing him getting finished at his own game?
He's always that's right. He gets beaten by choked out or something. Or a decision loss is different to actually getting knocked out. You never thought you'd see the day Conor gets knocked out. But I agree. See, we're a little bit different. We have, if you listen to the episodes on the Couch Critics, we do go a bit on this. Yeah. I am like a storyline guy, but I like like you said, what makes sense.
A purist.
I like to see the matchups that make sense.
And that's how it should be.
That's 100%. How it should be. But Dana, obviously, is looking at the money side of things. How can you sell someone that just got knocked out, just rematching the next week? No one else except for Conor can get that. And like you said, I want to see him go and try and get that lightweight belt. Whereas there's a lot more interest with the more casual fans to see Conor back in the ring. So that's where I lose. That's where it loses me a little bit.
It comes from a lot from the WWE.
Yes.
It does.
And we love storylines. Like everyone loves a storyline, and everyone loves it.
Except Beau.
Except me.
Bruh, I'm balls deep in the storyline.
That's why we contrast. Like, I want nothing more than Conor to fight Dustin, and that's when where we split heads. But we all love the storyline. I specifically do. Growing up watching WWE, it's the best show ever.
Yeah. See, I never got into that growing up.
Massive,
But I think just like being a guy who loves to share story and tell story, like you think
everyone appreciates
what a story that is. If that happens. Where does Michael Chandler fit into it?
Bro,
no one wants to fight that guy.
Love Michael Chandler.
The cool thing about him is, I think there was a lot of doubts because anytime somebody comes from outside of the UFC, there's always that question. Well, this is the big league. It is the top league, the A division, the golden standard. Let's see if you can mix it with the big boys. And as a guy who's got that, he's got a wrestling pedigree, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But he comes in and just
starches.
rocks a guy who's an unbelievable and damaging striker and
so durable too. Like he's
Dan Hooker is fucking durable as
Right.
fight against Dustin.
Paul Felder, like he's been in wars and no one can finish him, and then Chandler, like you said,
Chandler beat him, like we said, at his own game.
It's a bit of a blessing and a curse for Chandler because Chandler's come in and he was just standing for the Habib fight, and everyone was a bit off him. They're like, what's this dude coming on and being standing for the title? And then he goes in against Dan Hooker, finishes him in 2 minutes, and it's like, well, now
we haven't seen much
of
of him.
anything about Chandler. He hasn't even got a title shot, so it was a bit of a best case scenario for him in terms of his performance, but worst case in terms of like people don't know anything about him, like, and they won't go back and watch Bellator.
That's right. And with Dan Hooker took such a risk. Like, well, look what happened. This is worst case for Dan Hooker. You get beat by a Bellator guy, pushes you. Like even though like you said, but it pushes you down. There's no real risk versus reward. It's all in Michael Chandler's favour. So Gaethje to verse. We don't know much about him. So Gaethje's like, I don't want to take the chance of that happening to me too. He'd rather fight. The Oliveira.
Because that's the fight that seems to make sense, isn't it? Him against Gaethje and then Poirier against Charles Oliveira.
Yeah,
and
that's what it should be.
Because really, that's how it should be. If we're
100%.
talking rankings and we're talking that system. Do you think it then gives cause to where we should look at these divisions having almost those top ranked tournaments where the top 6 guys battle it out for those opportunities and for those positions? Because for me, especially in a game now where I get it, it's business, it's money.
Yeah.
But Bellator had success with their tournaments, didn't they?
Yeah, they still do.
Have you just seen the light heavyweight one?
They just released it.
Bro, insane.
Romero and Rumble Johnson.
Romero versus Rumble Johnson's in there. Vadim Nemkov,
that's their
now
champ.
Ryan Bader, the former champ. They've laid it out. They've put the photo up. It's laid out. So these two verse move into this bracket. These two verse move into this bracket.
So
then you know who's the man.
You know what? It's real exciting. It makes all make sense.
It's great because it gives us a visual of how this is going to take place.
Yes.
As fans, it almost gives you anticipation and build up, and it sells these fights way before because we're going, well, if Bader beats him or if Anderson beats. And then they're against each other, and then we start to get pumped up about it.
100%.
It gives you clarity.
100%.
In the UFC, like you said, such and such beats Chandler wins against Gaethje. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going in up the next stage because that's how the UFC works.
Cool.
It works differently. But I don't know if it's a thing that because Bellator's taken that and it's kind of their shtick that the UFC doesn't want to look like they're copying them. I'm not sure, but
Tony Hawk's house.
It's just about to say.
We've got the window open. We're letting that breeze flow through, but it fascinates me as well. Like looking at, we're in a world now where, ever since Conor's kind of set the precedent for a lot of things, right? Whether it's those big money fights in the UFC where money and business dictates matchups, whether it's a guy who was a pure mixed martial arts fighter going, hey, I'm going to go and box arguably the GOAT, Floyd Mayweather, and make a lot of money. And then, boxing, there's far more money in boxing at the top leagues than there is in MMA. And then you got guys like Kamaru saying, I'd box someone. I'd consider boxing a Canelo with a bit of time under my belt. Or, you got guys like, I know Cedric Doumbé in the kickboxing world is a freak of nature. Bro, he's that guy's nuts. French, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's... he reckons he's been training a bit of wrestling and jiu-jitsu and considering coming into the fold. Is there a guy who, maybe it's for you, Cal, you just said you really like him. is there a guy outside of mixed martial arts who you think could really come in and test people at his weight class?
For me, it's Cedric Doumbé, and I can't really think of Tyson Fury. He's been training with Darren Till a little bit. He reckons he'll come. I don't think he will.
I don't think
but
he will.
there's a few out there. Terence Crawford. He has a wrestling background
What
allegedly.
And his kids wrestle, don't they? So he's around it a lot. Isn't he skilled?
Bro, I reckon he's the best.
Is he southpaw and orthodox? You don't know.
You don't know.
What night he rocks up.
Yeah, exactly right. He can fight whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He's insane.
I think Jordan Burroughs is another one.
Jordan Burroughs.
Jordan Burroughs. So he's a wrestler, isn't he?
Olympic champion.
Go wrestler. And he's been looking. He hasn't done the issue that worries me with him. He's never thrown a punch. He literally admits it because I've never thrown a punch in my life. But he wants to transition over. So I don't know. He's definitely got this wrestling base. If he can put the strikes together, he could be the next Kamaru Usman.
Hell yeah.
You know, I digress a little bit here. It's funny, you just said he's never thrown the strikes. And one thing that I picked up, like I said, I've been watching a lot of Conor Gracie lately. And just fascinated by the way that guy moves and trains and his philosophies because they're so unique to him and to his family probably as well. He spoke about, not even really needing to strike that much. And I think that's changed a little bit after he's lost to Cub Swanson. But he said that, really, if you are a purist in jiu-jitsu, you're basically a defensive fighter that doesn't necessarily need to strike, but needs to know how to use someone's strike against them. Do you feel like there is an argument for anyone who can be solely dependent on their one particular skill set within the UFC?
You just got to look at Habib.
Ben Askren even as well.
Ben Askren. I think, when it comes to the UFC. You know what, I think 5 years ago, absolutely. But the way the game's changed so quickly in the past 5 years, you see with the Dustin and Conor, the leg kicks, the calf kicks. Conor, like you talked about before, ring rust. He hasn't fought. He hasn't seen that before. He hasn't seen the calf kicks. And
game's changed.
I think you got guys like Colby Thickness coming up, who we both talk to. The dude he fought as well, Sam Kikembo, and they're martial artists. They're training MMA every day round, and they're coming up so they have an all-round skill set. They can do everything. So I think 5 years ago, absolutely, but the way how quick the game's changing and evolving, it's going to be hard to in the future.
Yeah, but in the same breath, as we see with Adesanya, we haven't seen him wrestle at all. He's got good takedown defense, but we haven't seen him get wrestled, and he's got to the top with just striking. So
they're still there.
That you can do it, but he is the elite of the elite. I think he's the best striker that's ever been in the UFC. So you got to be there at that level.
It's funny because I heard Cody Garbrandt talking about that the other day on Food Truck, and he was saying that 100% takedown defense. But I'm like, but what happens if someone does?
Yes.
Because you're never always going to be in the best position. You might find yourself a little bit uneven on your feet. All of a sudden, that takedown defense is out the window because you're unbalanced.
Exactly.
And, if you get taken down, then it's...
Exactly. The Sugar Sean O'Malley with the leg kick, he got that leg kick and got drop foot. And that's just like a 1 in a million chance to hit that peroneal nerve. Hits the right nerve and his foot literally doesn't work. He's trying to step forward and he's actually stepping on his own toes because his toes just weren't working. So exactly, and what happens when that
But if he was good at jiu-jitsu, he could have just laid and he could have played that game. So
had an offensive guard
because he's just a striker, majority striker. You seen him. He was on the ground, didn't know what to do, got finished. So.
Exactly. So definitely did well.
I think like I say, there's the elite guys like your Adesanyas and your Habibs and stuff. They're the exceptions, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be very hard to be super one-dimensional with the guys coming up.
I'm interested. There's Marcus Buchecha as well. Marcus Almeida's fighting one. He's like a jiu-jitsu god as well. So I'm very interested.
So he's a bigger fella, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. So
what, heavyweight?
Heavyweight. I think he's fighting because he was going to fight Alan Ngalane.
Yeah.
But I'm interested. It's his first fight. He's in one championship, so he's debuting soon. So I'm really keen to see how his trajectory goes. See how he.
One championship gets a bit of hype, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're
very
good,
popular in Asia. I actually just had the episode that'll go out 21st of Feb, so tomorrow, like I said, we're filming this on the 20th, is Faux Thor.
I seen you posted on your story.
He's currently, we're talking not really about fighting, but about the Myanmar military coup, and he's in one championship, and I don't know if you guys have seen Fight World with Frank Grillo. on Netflix.
Oh yes,
Oh,
I watched
yeah.
I watched the start.
And he's a lightweight fighter, so the guys that use headbutts and it's insane. It's like Muay Thai with headbutts. Their mental cases are so tough, and he fights in one championship. But in one championship you got the MMA, but you've also got particular arts too. There's a lot of Muay Thai fights. There's a lot of, so it seems like a more natural pathway to see guys, excuse me, coming through one championship and transitioning into MMA
100.
before they come across, which I think is a good opportunity for these guys to transition.
One championship they're going to blow up. They're on their way. They're already pretty big, but they're going to blow up. They've got the same as the weight cuts too. They don't have weight cuts. They take your hydration test, see what your body runs at, and that's the weight class you have to fight in.
I like that.
So you can't...
healthy.
Yeah, so every single person in there is hydrated and they know they're fighting at their proper weight class. That's what I love about one championship.
You get the best version of themselves because they're not depleting themselves.
Exactly.
That's where aspirin comes from.
Yes,
but Bellator do that as well in terms of they got Bellator kickboxing.
That's true.
Yeah. And they have these other branches inside the big umbrella of Bellator, and I think it's a really good thing. And I've seen John Wayne Pars have another fight in one FC.
How old's he now?
Wow,
42, 3,
just
something like that.
Anthony Mundine in boxing, and he had hip surgery. That's
hip
why
replacement
surgery.
Crazy.
So literally replaced his hip, and feels that good. He was only supposed to be like light training, and he's just booked a fight. To it's Muay Thai, isn't it? It's Muay Thai, but in a cage.
With MMA gloves.
With MMA gloves. So it's like a bit of a spin on the traditional martial art, but it's going to be awesome.
It's the world of fighting is so interesting because it is now becoming so easy and almost like it's like liquid. Like everyone kind of flows through each art now and can kind of come into these different divisions. I find though the biggest issue with guys coming from their particular martial art, like boxing or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu, to mixed martial arts, tends to happen later in their career. Which I think is the issue. They've just waited too long.
Yeah.
Like you look at a guy like say a Tyson Fury, he comes into the MMA world. Yeah. Like, fuck dude, you've been fighting for ages. Like how much time are you really giving us here? Like you're coming in for one fight or you're gonna come in and build a career.
That's right.
It's the same thing like when Conor fought Floyd. I actually like Conor's got unbelievable kicks, but I think why doesn't Conor just go and like dive into the boxing world and like he's obviously not that well versed on the ground. He's always in trouble whenever he gets taken down, and he seems to like he's almost like Cody Garbrandt. The minute Cody Garbrandt gets hit, he just becomes a 16-year-old in a schoolyard. Like he just starts throwing punches left, right, and center, and doesn't know what he's doing. And Conor's the same on the ground. And that I think. You know that you can sell big fights. Kind of like a Jake Paul is doing, like these celebrity, which I want to talk about with you guys. You see that opportunity to sell fights and do business.
Yeah,
it's strange that he didn't go there because however much he made, 100 million or whatever, to fight Floyd, he could fight all of them dudes, man.
Yeah, there's so many fights out there for him.
Canelo would have taken the fight because he's very business driven.
Yeah,
there's so many opportunities there for. He could have made bank. He could have made bank in another 2 fights that would probably equal what he'd make in about 5 or 6 UFC fights.
Yeah,
I think it's still there. I think we talk about a bit. Him and Manny Pacquiao got the same manager, Audiatar. So
Paradigm.
I think that's a good chance.
It's easy for him to match it up. They're literally managed by the same guy.
So I think it's still there. And if say Conor loses his next UFC fight, it's still there.
Maybe a backup plan.
Yeah.
If he loses.
Let's talk about the celebrity boxers, and we haven't really seen it in MMA yet. Like we've seen CM Punk do it, and
seen how it
didn't go that well. I think MMA is a different game because the minute you walk in, even if someone is not a high level ground guy, they're just going to take you down anyways in most cases. But we've seen, I guess there's a place for it, and it's so divided. Get a guy like Mike Tyson, who is one of the goats of boxing, who loves to see these celebrity fights because he knows his sport's dying. Do you think we'll see much of that in the UFC or MMA as a whole? Because I think it's almost like our sport isn't dying. It's only on the art. And if you come in and you're out of place, you will be found out. And taking a punch to the head is bad enough when you're not trained. But taking a fucking kick to the head or a shin or an elbow or, being in a position where you could really hurt yourself and do some like life-changing damage. I don't know that we'll see it flow into MMA too much.
I don't think so. Definitely not in the UFC, Bellator. I don't think Dana's pretty open that he's not in the business of it. But as we've seen, Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz, no one would sanction it. Dana said no, they couldn't get it, so they made their own. So there is that. That
was with Golden Boy, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Golden Boy Promotions. That was the first time. But so there's people out there that can make it happen. So I don't think we'll see it on the bigger platforms, but there's definitely an option for it to happen.
And I think there's a lot more money in boxing too.
Yeah.
From an outside perspective, people would see boxing, I don't want to say easier, but it's less risk, I guess, and there might be more money in it, and everyone feels like they can throw on a pair of gloves and go for gold. And there's such a market with these YouTube guys, Jake Paul, Logan Paul. They're almost bigger.
They're making money.
They are.
Bro, they're bigger than the biggest guys, boxing guys. They're probably making more money than them. Like,
when you've got 24 million subscribers, you've got an audience there that you're selling to, like, immediately. And we talk about, I think it was like Conor Mcgregor that had 2 million pay-per-views or something around that. And then you think, well, these guys have got 24 million subscribers on a YouTube channel who watch them do stupid shit on YouTube. So
even if only half of them buy it, it's still quadruple what they can make.
It's insane, isn't it?
And we all pay. Like, I hate Jack Paul, but I'm going to pay to watch him fight probably every time because I want to see him get knocked out. So as much as, like, he's a dick in that, but what he's doing, he's really, really good at it. And he's bringing eyes to the sport, which is, it's a benefit for him.
What boxing needs.
Yeah,
for me, I think Goody raised a good point. Sam Goodman, who we had on last week, I don't mind it, the celebrity boxing, but I'd like to see some professional fighters on the undercard. I've seen it a few times, but even like the rugby league all-star fight night, I don't know if you watched that. He was meant to fight on that, Sam Goodman, but he didn't get the opportunity, and it was just like, it's a good light to promote young up-and-coming actual boxers.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? It just reminded me. We were all at the Gallen Hunt fight.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think we're sitting a couple rows apart from each other, but didn't know it. What a shock that was.
I know. Bro, we went and watched Mark Hunt in Adelaide, and I think he was doing that dispute with the UFC. He didn't throw a punch. And we were disappointed then, and then we're like, all right, we're getting redemption, because we've loved him since we were kids. Like, we're getting redemption. We're going to see him have a scrap, and then he rocked him a couple of times. He just sat there.
He didn't do much.
He looked like a sumo wrestler.
So heaps heavier than he did in the UFC. He's just didn't take his camp as seriously, I don't think. But I think Gallen's gotten to the point now, we can't call him an ex-NRL player anymore. He's a boxer.
Yeah, he's good, man.
He devotes his time. It's a discredit to him to say he's not a boxer, because I believe he's hit that stage now. He's
proven himself enough times, hasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah. And not any Joe Blow can just get in the ring and beat, Mark Hunt. You know what I mean? Like,
100%. It doesn't. And that, for me, I thought Gallen was going to get found out. Like, I'll put my hand up and say I was so wrong.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, I cannot believe that happened.
Insane.
One fight I'm so excited for, to go back to pro boxing itself. Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua.
Bro,
what a matchup.
This is the one, eh?
I love both guys.
Yeah.
Like, both guys are great personalities. They're great role models for the sport.
100%.
I think, maybe the Tyson Fury of old wasn't, but the Tyson Fury that we've seen rise and come back and, sort of redeem himself. Not that he ever lost his status within the sport, but I think as an individual, as a human being, he's really turned his life around.
Like we
that
say,
fight is so exciting.
Hell yeah.
We gravitate towards that. That's why we like him, the underdog story. They're coming back. He almost tried to commit suicide, all these things, and to bounce back like this, everyone loves him. And then everyone loves Anthony Joshua because the same reasons. He lost to someone he shouldn't have lost to in Andy Ruiz, and he's coming back, and now you got the two people fighting that everyone wants to see. And I can't wait.
That's a bad thing about boxing, is you never get to see, or you don't, not never, but it takes a long time to get the fights you want to get. It seems like these
a lot of politics.
A lot of it. And then these two seem like it's been pretty straightforward. They've announced it and it's going ahead. So hopefully it gets, we get to see it 100%. And it's going to be crazy.
It's funny, isn't it? Because AJ is obviously very silky. He's got great skills. We've seen. I think the question around AJ was always, did he have the rounds in him? And then we saw the Klitschko fight, and we said, okay, he's got the rounds in him. Yeah. He also, like we spoke about before, got rocked. Yeah. And, regathered composure and come back and won that fight and finished him in the 11th, I think it was. Yeah. For Tyson Fury, that man just moves, doesn't he? Like he moves like... It's so unique to see a big man move like that. Yeah.
And when you same back to the Wonderboy Thompson, if you get a silhouette of Tyson Fury and Wonderboy, black, and you see them move, you know who they are. You know what I mean? Like, exactly 100%. Like said, he's got his own style. I love watching Tyson Fury fight, and to see such a big man so light on his feet. You see him in that last fight where he's sitting back on the ropes and dodging all the punch. Like, he moves like a middleweight. It's
100%.
insane.
It's almost unnatural to see.
He's one of
see
a
a
kind.
dude that size moving
Yeah.
like that. It's weird. It's unnatural. To
Predictions for that fight.
It's so hard to go against.
I'm biased. AJ is my favourite boxer. But I truly, like, in my heart, I think Tyson Fury beats him.
I can't go against him.
Yeah,
I
he's
agree.
so skilled, man.
Just-
And AJ a little bit
I
chinny.
think it'll be a decision
Yeah.
Yeah.
fight though. I don't think either guy will knock either guy out. Like, I think we've seen now that a bus could hit Tyson Fury and the
Yeah.
guy would get back up
Yeah.
within
Yes.
10 seconds.
100%.
And I just think, I don't know that Fury will knock AJ out.
Yeah.
I think it will be a real battle, but I think you'll see that silky, that classy
Yeah.
move from Tyson throughout those 12 rounds where he will, he'll probably, not convincingly, I think they'll both have their moments, but I
Yeah.
think it'll be clear at the end of
That
it
is a winner. Yeah.
that Tyson's won it.
100%. And Tyson, like, when he was moving forward got Deontay Wilder on his back foot, you could see, like, when he's moving forward, he's a menace. Like, he's always, like you said, been the movement guy. You can't hit him, but that aggressive approach, it's going to be, if he brings that into the Joshua fight, it's going to be fireworks.
Have you heard the sauna story?
No.
So back when he fought Klitschko the first time, he heard that Klitschko was king of the sauna. So apparently he could sit in there for days, right? And so he went in there, like, being there, I think he was like 20 at the time or something. He was young as. And they went into the sauna together. I don't think they said a word to each other the whole time, but he said, we were sitting in there for ages, and he's like, I was dying, like I was burning inside, but I just knew I couldn't leave before he left. And then eventually Klitschko got up and walked out.
Yeah.
He's like, but then you can't leave immediately because then it's just like, he knows.
Yeah.
So to stay in there, apparently like they had to peel him off the floor. He was that fucked when he got out of there. But it's funny, isn't it? It's mental games.
Yeah.
And he goes,
Yeah.
I reckon that honestly is what beat him.
Yeah.
mentally.
Before the fight.
Mentally, he knew that he probably knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he probably knew that he waited that few minutes to leave just to prove a point. But
Yeah.
mentally, when you see that, you go, it's like if I went for a marathon and I'm like rooted at 42 Ks and my mate goes, might go into another 5, you're like,
Yeah.
what a badass.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's got something extra in the tank.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan actually said that to David Goggins about Cameron Haynes because they were going for a run together, and he said, put a limit, because if you two are trying to outmatch each other, you will kill yourselves. He's like, you just keep running because they're so
Isn't
competitive.
he a fascinating character, Cameron Haynes?
Yeah, he's the
a
man.
guy that runs a marathon for breakfast just so he's a better hunter.
Yeah.
It's
What a
nuts.
maniac.
Yeah.
Going
He's
back
wild.
as well, Mike Tyson, he used to say he'd win the fight. He won the fight before he stepped in the ring. Once, like, face-offs, looking in someone's eyes, he can see, he can tell if he's got that mental edge. As soon as they look away or something, boom, he knew. Whether that's a mental thing in himself to convince himself, or if it was the mental edge, but there's something to that.
I think we're seeing that with Conor, because Conor had this mystique about him in the first Dustin fight, especially. Dustin, like, you can see, he's so tense, and then now he's taken the nice approach. They're like, he's just another human. He bleeds, and now you've seen him get knocked out. I think it's going to be...
Takes a bit of the mistake.
Yeah, because before it was like, it was Conor McGregor, you're fighting the man, and then now it's just Conor McGregor, he's a normal dude.
What was the thing Tyson Fury was doing? Was he ringing AJ overnight?
Yeah, so you knock him out.
And Eddie
AJ
Hearn.
like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm going to fucking knock you out, you dog.
does.
And then just hang up on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used to, I think he was calling Eddie Hearn at night too,
Yeah.
like at 2, 3 in the morning. Eddie's like, man, I'm fucking asleep next to my wife. What do you want?
It's
He's
so
a character,
funny.
right?
It's
He's
so
like,
he's
come
funny.
cool.
out, Eddie, come out.
It's so funny they just keep answering him.
And then keep talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
That's
It's
cool.
actually, it's funny. I heard. Have you heard of True Geordie?
No.
A Pommy fella, a great podcast. If you want to listen,
Yeah,
he's done an outstanding one with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, okay.
And I like Eddie Hearn. He's a bit of a character,
Yeah.
right? And gets quite involved in the politics of boxing. But, and he's AJ's guy. He's in AJ's corner. But he done a great podcast with True Geordie, and he was telling a story. I think his dad was a bit of a fighter, a bit of a pro boxer, and he was pro boxer and snooker player,
Right.
right?
Good mix.
And I think he said the first time he ever went to the gym, his dad dragged him up there. And I think he's like 17 or 18. His dad was a little bit older. And I think it was like one of the first times they got into spar. He pieced his dad up, and he goes, most people just wouldn't say that, but he goes, my dad's up the pub going, fuck, I tell you what, my son belted the fuck out of me the other day. What a legend. Like,
Yeah.
That's right.
just pumping him up a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's cool to hear those stories, isn't it?
behind the
Like,
scenes stuff.
behind the scenes of boxing. And it really is passed down through generations, I think, martial arts. And we've seen, especially in boxing, you know, MMA is so new that we'll see that in probably 10 years now. Those younger guys who are coming through off their dad's footsteps.
100%.
You know, it is cool though to look back on the pedigree of MMA in the last 25 years and how far it's come. We were speaking about it before. Have you seen the stuff about the Lions Den, Ken Shamrock, and how their gym started?
No, I haven't seen that.
That's really interesting to watch. So Ken Shamrock talks about, you know, fighting and he had a rough childhood and a rough upbringing, and he fought a lot in Japan. He was a bit of a name in Japan, and he used to fight these guys. And back then they were almost Marvel fights. They were so almost thought of as vicious because it was these guys who were throwing elbows and doing all these things that were so outside of the traditional boxing that the world was used to. And he found that it was hard to find guys to train with because he wanted to be better. Striking, wrestling, ground game, all of this stuff. What do I do? So he basically built a gym, and he'd run these tryouts where guys would fight for ages and ages on end. And like it was really testing. Yeah, it was really testing. Watch it. It's called the Lions Den.
Yeah, kind of like the Tiger Muay Thai tryouts. Surely you've seen that.
Yeah, the Tiger tryouts are insane.
Freestyle just done one.
They've just done one for the champ camp with Alex Volko. So they've had a few guys. We knew a few guys that tried out for it too. So it's cool to see. It is a cool thing that.
Really cool to see, isn't it? I think it's fascinating too in our area to have. You know, they call him the Master Joe.
Master Splinter.
Master Splinter, Joe Lopez out there, and to see that we've got a world champion, we don't appreciate that, do we?
That's what annoys us the most, that no one appreciates it. And with like the tall poppy syndrome, where because he's up here and he's from the same area, people want to bring him down. Like he does get a lot of support, but then there's the people that are like,
we should have a bloody statue of Volko in
literally.
Like, he's our guy, and we should be putting him up on a pedestal. And you know, I don't
100%.
know.
Well, you look at Conor McGregor, Ireland. You look at Khabib in Russia. You see
Darren Till, Liverpool.
Yeah,
when he walks out, it's wild.
These guys, and then it's probably another catalyst. What started the podcast for us.
It was.
Appreciation for. We just hate to see a local champ get downplayed, but it's not everyone. Around here, we get a lot of support for him and for the local guys as well. But
I think it's great for our area too. Like we go, hold on, we've got a world class gym here. We've got, you know, like he trains at Baymed. Those guys, and he speaks volumes of his strength and conditioning programs and the way that's developed his game and improved his body and his. Yeah, I think he had back issues for a while, didn't he?
He said that on
Joe Rogan. Biomed, they got a shout out from Joe Rogan the other episode.
Cody Garbrandt's one.
He's got issues.
I heard that,
And they're going, talk to Volko because he had back issues and da-da-da. So
isn't that cool? Imagine if Wollongong then become a place where some of these guys are coming out to train.
Exactly.
We see Alex do that a little bit and go to New Zealand to city kickboxing, but that's more so to get the caliber of guys to be sparring to... You know, because MMA is like it's new worldwide, but it's so new here in Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think as we see it become more popular here, it's cool. Like I know Tyson Pedro's been getting down to freestyle and
Jamie Malarkey as well. They come from Tyson Pedro cartel. Jamie Malarkey, the boys, Jimmy Croup also from Melbourne. They come up and train with Rob Whittaker too. So we're slowly starting to get a bit of a base here, but like I said, it's only so new. A few years once we get like that pedigree coming up, we've already got a few like really really good fighters out there, and imagine in 10-15 years. That's why we're trying to jump in early, because you can see it blowing up. It's going to blow up.
100%. It's, you know, it's like me, Joe Rogan. If you ever want to come out here and sit in the studio, you just got to send me a message.
Get the DMs.
Boys, fuck, we've been going for nearly 2 hours here. What a chat.
Joe Rogan
I sort of want to make sure that one thing I do with all of my podcasts is, if you're here, it's because I like what you're doing, you know, and I'm really particular with my guests because whilst, you know, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet here, but, you know, who I interview is kind of a reflection of me too, you know, and I like to think that I believe in the people I have on the pod and that I want to be a part of their journey and I want to see them succeed and come up, and I want to make sure that as much as everyone enjoys listening to this, that I want to hope they can't get enough of this, you know, that they want to go back and follow you guys. And like we said before, your content is so different than mine. You know, every now and then I have someone within the world of MMA or fighting come through the show, but it's definitely not my bread and butter, and it is yours. So where do the people find you?
Couch Critics MMA on Instagram. We're pretty much everywhere that it's that. YouTube.
Twitter, Facebook.
And how often are you releasing?
So we would do a weekly episode, which is, like you said, it's a breakdown of the
upcoming
fights,
card.
the upcoming card that's going to be on that weekend or the next weekend, and we also break down what happened in the last episode. We also put some news and stuff in for people that, you know, you don't know if Darren Till or someone got an injury, they're not fighting, you think they're coming up still, you know. We got a lot of questions from people, who's fighting this weekend? We kind of want to give people that platform so they know exactly who's fighting, what's been booked, what's coming up.
And then interviews as well. So we're looking to do an interview maybe every 2 weeks.
I'd say,
Every 2 weeks roughly, and hopefully more in the future, to once a week or stuff like that. So.
And will that be more so a mix of Aussie talent, or is it going to be a vast array of
I think a vast array, and we want to dive into, we've been talking to a guy, Mindlock. He's a
sports psychologist.
Love that.
Love that. We want to get them sort of people on the podcast, because fighting's 70-80% mental, 20% physical. So we want to get them sort of guys on the podcast.
Even coaches, like we want to get into the local scene, and even up in Sydney, get the UFC coaches on, and everything, not just fighters, like you said, the behind the scenes stuff, the coaching, what goes into being a good coach, just
dietitians, everything.
Dietitians, whatever we can get. Yeah, we're going to try and blow it up this year.
And I appreciate your words just before then too. That means a lot to us.
100%.
Even to be here, I'm super grateful to be here.
100%.
I appreciate it, boys. It's great to have you here.
For sure. We love what you're doing, and you love what we do as well. And we, of course, support other locals. So we're stoked to be here, bro.
I appreciate it. So, you know, whether you're listening to this or watching, and you want to know what's happening with the Hiss Huss Hush, you want to, you know, cop a little bit of a left, right, good night as you put your head on the pillow and tune into what these boys are doing and what they're reviewing, previewing, or even just, you know, those interviews that they're talking to great people within the fighting world, whether that be the athletes, like they said, the professionals that are with and around the sport. Just make sure you head across and follow these guys. I'll have all of their links in the show notes, in the description, so you can get behind them. Please do. I know that I'll be tuning into all the episodes that are to come, and what an exciting year it's going to be for you guys and for the sport as a whole. So, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for being a part of the experience. We're here, I was going to say live and free, but we're not really live, are we? We're here for free, you know, for you to dive into all these platforms. And now that we're here in the HQ, the home of the experience, you're going to get a whole lot more of this. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate that.
Boys, cheers.